4. The Tablet. Chapter 1. The Signal.
Danny!
Denise Wolfe twisted and turned in the chair beside her mom's hospital bed. For the third time that night, she dreamed of how her mother had fallen off the ladder. For the third time that night, she saw her tumbling like a Barbie doll from the second-story window. And for the third time, she heard the crack of shrubs and the sickening thud of her mother hitting the ground.
Mom! Mom!
No answer. Denise raced toward the bushes, a coldness already gnawing in her stomach. She found her sprawled out on the ground, trying to catch her breath.
I'm all right, Danny. I'm all right. It's okay.
But it wasn't okay. Denise could see that in a second. It wasn't okay the way her mom kept trying to breathe but couldn't. And it wasn't okay the way one of her legs was twisted and pointed in the wrong direction. Mom had been trying to change the storm windows, as she did every spring. Of course, if there was a husband around the house, she wouldn't have had to. Then again, if there was a husband around, they'd probably have enough money to buy windows that didn't need changing. But Mom had no husband, at least not anymore. And Denise had no father, at least not one that she could remember. He'd left when she was 4. Now it was just the two of them, mother and daughter. Of course they had their fights, like over the torn and baggy clothes Denise always wore, but the two loved each other fiercely. And when the chips were down, they always knew the other would be there. And that afternoon, being there meant Denise calling 911, riding with Mom in the ambulance, pacing in the waiting room, and listening to the doctors say she had some bruised ribs and a shattered leg. Everybody told Denise to go home and get some rest. Your mother will be fine, they said. She's under mild sedation. She'll barely know you're here. But Denise wouldn't listen, and she wouldn't leave. She'd already lost one parent. She wasn't about to lose another. Instead, she borrowed a blanket and a pillow from an adjacent room and tried to get comfortable in the steel and vinyl chair next to Mom's bed. Here she waited, and here her world-famous anger started to burn. Why had Mom fallen? Why did things always go wrong? Why was life always so hard? Of course Denise knew Imager loved her. After all, she'd been to Feyraw. She'd even been rebreathed. But sometimes that love seemed so far away. Sometimes it seemed as if Imager had forgotten, or that he didn't know, or worse yet, that he simply didn't care. She mumbled as she drifted in and out of a fitful sleep.
It would be a whole lot different if I were in charge. A whole lot different.
The thought churned in her mind, of being in charge, of being the boss. Unfortunately, she had no idea that that thought would trigger a little alarm for a creature who had sworn revenge upon her, a creature on the molten hot surface of Eknob.
T-Bolt, come quickly. It's happening.
The Merchant of Emotions turned from his monitors and chuckled as he watched the huge, hairy T-Bolt gallop toward him. The animal's 8 furry legs raced across the steaming rocks as fast as they could. He would have barked and yelped in pain, but he had nothing to bark and yelp with. In an outburst of anger, the merchant had destroyed T-Bolt's vocal cords many epochs ago.
Look, my pet. It's the Denise, the creature who destroyed our illusionist.
The Merchant of Emotions threw up his claws in joy. He fluttered his wings in delight. The illusionist had been his sister, until Denise accidentally destroyed her in the Sea of Justice. Ever since then, the merchant had vowed vengeance, not only upon Denise, but upon all of her kind, upon all Upside-Downers. The only problem was he had been confined to the desolate planet of Eknob, forbidden ever to enter the Upside-Down Kingdom, at least on his own, at least without an invitation. But all that was changing. For months he'd been monitoring Denise's thoughts, waiting for the opportunity. And now it was here, the beginning of distrust, the seed of rebellion.
The Denise is doubting. What a fool! The Denise thinks it knows more than Imager.
Of course, T-Bolt had no idea what his master was saying or why he was so excited, but it made little difference. The merchant simply glanced down to the emotion generator strapped to his chest, scanned the dozens of silver switches, and flipped the one labeled Excitement. A misty cloud shot from the contraption's nozzle. It struck T-Bolt dead center and filled him with so much excitement that he couldn't contain himself. He was so thrilled that he began leaping on the merchant and panting. The only trouble was that when he panted, he drooled.
Get down, you nincompoop! Stop that slobbering!
Immediately, T-Bolt hopped down and closed his mouth. For if he didn't hop down and close his mouth, he might not have any legs to hop down to or a mouth to close.
Now, if I can just get the Denise to dream about the tablet, if I can just convince the Denise to begin writing on it.
The merchant spun back to the monitor before him and adjusted several dials.
Then the Denise will invite us into her world. Then I will get my claws on the tablet, and then we will finally be able to destroy her wretched little world.
The merchant broke into laughter. The joy of destroying Imager's precious upside-down kingdom caused every crystal scale on his body to quiver with delight. T-Bolt was still too overwhelmed with excitement to understand the humor until the merchant reached down and snapped on the laughter switch. Another cloud of mist shot out and struck T-Bolt. The animal began to laugh uncontrollably. He couldn't help himself. That was the power the merchant of emotions had over T-Bolt, over all creatures who gave him control. And it was this power that had been banned from the Upside-Down Kingdom. But even from great distances, he could sometimes direct dreams. Not a lot, mind you, but if the dreamer was angry enough, if there was enough rebellion in their hearts, then there might be room for the merchant to nudge some of their dreams in his direction. He might even be able to influence a waking thought or two. That's exactly what he hoped to accomplish with the Denise. That's exactly how he hoped to enter and destroy her world. Back in Grandpa O'Brien's second-hand shop, Joshua and Nathan were arguing again. Like Denise, they'd both visited Feyre, they'd both been rebreathed, and they'd both started to grow in Imager's ways. But when it came to good old-fashioned brotherly bickering, well, these guys were pros.
You're the oldest. So till Grandpa gets back from deliveries, let me visit Denny and you stay to look after the shop.
No way.
Josh stooped to adjust his hair in the reflection of a used toaster.
All you and Denny ever do is fight. She needs me at the hospital, somebody more mature and sensitive to look after her.
Oh, please.
He turned and limped toward the counter. His hip, the one that had bothered him since birth, was acting up again. But he wouldn't let his brother see the pain. No way. Not when he had an argument to win. They'd been going around like this ever since Denise had phoned from the hospital, and they were no closer to an agreement than when they started. As far as Nathan knew, the only person more stubborn than himself was his brother, and according to Joshua, the only person more stubborn than himself was Nathan. So around and around they went, and around some more. Fortunately, the standoff was about to end, because suddenly they heard a very familiar voice.
Now, come on, little buddies. Don't get in a dither. Put aside all your fighting and let us draw hither.
The brothers exchanged looks. Only one person in the universe had such awful poetry.
Aristophanes!
Next came the familiar of three very good friends cross-dimensionalizing into their world. And finally,
Get us down! Get us down from here!
the brothers tilted their heads back to see Aristophanes, a roly-poly creature with checkered vest and walking stick, and Listroque, a tall purple dude, complete with a mohawk and a tuxedo, spinning high above their heads. Apparently, Listroque's aim with the cross-dimensionalizer hadn't improved much. He and Aristophanes were caught on the ceiling fan, spinning round and round and round.
Won't you, ever get, the hang of that thing?
Cool is it. Any day now, sure of it am I.
The third member of the party wasn't caught on the fan. He was darting about their heads, chattering a mile a minute. Or was he laughing? It was hard to tell with Samson. The part ladybug, part dragonfly talked so fast it was hard to tell anything he said. Nathan raced to the switch on the wall and turned off the fan. Aristophanes didn't wait for it to stop.
Thank you, dear Nathan. There ain't a second to waste. The weaver, he's a-callin', so we better make haste.
Joshua and Nathan traded glances. The weaver, the kind old gentleman assigned by Imager to weave their life's tapestries, was calling them to Feyre.
But what about Denise? Doesn't he want her to come too?
Denny's the reason we're under such stress. She's dreaming up something that's causing a mess.
Again, Joshua and Nathan exchanged looks.
We can't leave just yet. Not till Grandpa gets back from his deliveries.
Worry don't about the store. This part of world freeze time, will we?
From their past adventures, Joshua could pretty much piece together his words, and he asked,
You mean you're going to freeze time again and make it stand still?
But here only at the store. Rest of world will be normal time.
Samson gave a quick chatter. Aristophanes nodded.
Good thinking, Sammy.
What's he saying?
Mr. Hornsberry, here is he?
My stuffed bulldog? No, he's at home.
Then swing by your home. Better do we.
Why?
Aristophanes explained.
Well, this adventure's gonna be tricky, but his help we can't skip. We'll just have to endure his snooty, snubbery lip.
Well, Nathan had to admit his stuffed bulldog was snooty, and he was a snob. But from all the excitement, it sounded like they were going to need all the man and dog power they could get.
Canteen of Imager's water. Still have you?
Not anymore. We used it all up in that ocean of mirrors.
Then loan you my own.
Lister Q removed a large water skin from around his neck. Joshua took it and quickly slipped it around his shoulders. Lister Q held the cross-dimensionalizer in his hand.
Ready to go, are we? If are you?
The brothers nodded, and without a word, Lister Q punched in the 4 quadrants. And they were off.
Chapter 2. Dream On.
Denise woke with a start. For a minute, she didn't know where she was, until she felt the jab of steel armrest in her ribs, the sticky vinyl against her arms, and the cramp in her neck. Ah, yes, the hospital chair. She looked over to her sleeping mom. The sedative was still working. In fact, in the dim morning light, her mother looked peaceful, almost happy. It was a look Denise hadn't seen in years, not from Mom, and for some reason it made her throat ache with sadness. Life is hard, then you die. Well, that's what Mom always said. Of course, it was supposed to be funny, but Denise knew better. All she had to do was look where they were this minute to see that it was no joke. Life was hard, too hard. Once again, she felt the frustration stirring inside. Frustration at what had happened. Frustration at their life in general. If Imager was supposed to be so loving, then why were things always so hard? Why was there so much pain? Why was there any suffering at all? Stewing in her anger, she recalled the dream. Not the dream about the ladder, but the other one. Now, she had no idea where it came from. It seemed so strange and yet so real. In it, she was upstairs, all alone in her uncle's attic. A large black trunk sat in front of her. Slowly, she knelt down to it. This is where she'd found the bloodstone. This is where she and Nathan had found Bud's cassette tape. And this is where the two of them had discovered the flat, thin stone at the very bottom. Carefully, she lifted the trunk's heavy lid. It groaned in protest. On the top were clothes, lots and lots of clothes. She began digging through them until she was at the bottom, until she finally felt it, the cold, smooth stone. She hauled it to the surface and set it on the pile of clothes. It was exactly as she remembered, a big, flat rock, super thin and super smooth. What she did not remember were the faint green lines running across the stone, like on notebook paper. Lines that made it look like, well, like a writing tablet. Suddenly, a felt marker appeared in her hand. And then it was over. Just like that. There was nothing more. It had ended and she woke up, and yet it still remained in her mind, just as clear as ever.
Weird.
She glanced over to Mom, then turned in her chair to go back to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Not anymore. There was something so real about that dream, something so real about that stone. She lay in the chair wide awake, staring into the dark, and wondering. Now, she didn't know how long she lay there, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour, but finally she'd had enough. Throwing off the blanket, she looked at her watch. 6:50. Now, she hated to cross town and wake up her aunt this early. She knew the lady would think she was strange. Then again, everyone else thought she was strange, so what was one more person added to the list? Denise turned back to Mom. She was still sleeping. She whispered,
I'll be back in a few minutes. I just gotta check something.
With that, Denise uncurled herself from the chair, grabbed her jacket, and headed for the door. By now, Joshua and Nathan were pretty used to traveling across dimensions. They were used to the blinding light and the sensation of falling, and they were even used to seeing themselves as Imagers saw them. Joshua as some sort of water-bearer in a burlap robe, and Nathan as a knight in a glowing suit of armor, just a few sizes too big, and carrying a heavy shield.
Master Nathan! Master Nathan!
Nathan turned to see Mr. Hornsberry, his stuffed bulldog, traveling beside him. Moments earlier, they had dropped by Nathan's bedroom to pick him up. Back there, he was just as dead and lifeless as any other stuffed dog. But here he was alive, and back to his usual snooty self.
How you doing, Mr. Hornsberry?
Nathan thought, since speaking wasn't necessary when cross-dimensionalizing.
As well as might be expected, having been confined to your closet these many months.
Sorry about...
I trust you're aware of the distinct aroma those gym socks in the corner have been emitting.
Before Nathan could answer, Aristophanes interrupted.
Good to see you, old boy. But we're a-comin' to the center. Best be thinking them good thoughts, so more gently you'll enter.
Nathan glanced down and saw they were approaching the brightly lit city. From past experiences, he knew what to do. Like the others, he closed his eyes and began thinking of Imager's greatness. Ever so faintly, he could hear Aristophanes starting to sing. Someone else was humming. Others quietly whispered. But no matter what they did, their purpose was the same: to dwell on Imager's greatness, to join with the rest of the universe in their love and adoration of him. Soon they passed through a thin layer of fog and moments later landed in the center. Nathan looked about in awe. Although he'd been to the center before, his reaction was always the same: wonder and astonishment. He was amazed at the beautiful lights, the incredible colors. But they were more than just lights and colors. They were living creatures that reflected Imager's greater light, his greater color. A greater light and color that blazed brilliantly just over the ridge. Then there was the music. It came from everywhere. The trees, the grass, even their own bodies. Everything vibrated with marvelous chords and intricate melodies, all directed toward Imager. But this time something was different. Joshua cried,
Nathan! Look at us! We're not shadows anymore. We're real!
Nathan looked at Josh, then down at himself. It was true. Now, in their past visits to the center, they had barely been visible. They'd only been faint shadows. It's not that they weren't real, it's just that, everything around them had been so much more real. But now, all of that had changed.
You're right!
Nathan tapped his armor.
You can't see through me. I'm totally here. We're both totally here.
Samson buzzed their heads and chattered an explanation. Aristophanes translated.
It's 'cause you're rebreathed. Now you got Imager's presence. You're no longer just shadows since you're filled with his essence.
'Cause his breath is inside us? That's what makes us real?
Lister Q nodded.
Ever since Whirlwind filled you, as real now you are as...
He turned toward the light glowing behind the ridge.
As real now you are as Imager.
Nathan looked back toward the ridge and the blazing light behind it. A light so brilliant that it made all the others dim by comparison. But he knew it was more than just light. It had a quality, a splendor. A splendor so intense that it nearly destroyed Denise on an earlier trip.
Aristophanes! Could we see him now? Now that we're solid and real and everything? Would it be safe to see Imager?
Nathan turned to him.
Are you crazy? You know what happened when Denny tried to see him?
But it's different now. We're rebreathed.
He turned to Lister Q and Aristophanes.
Right?
The Theronians exchanged uneasy looks. It was obvious they were in a hurry, but it was also obvious they didn't want to deprive either of the brothers from experiencing more of Imager. Samson chattered something, and with a heavy sigh, Aristophanes agreed.
Well, if that's what you want, I ain't gonna spoil it. But we gotta hurry and save your world from the toilet.
The group groaned as they started toward the ridge. Somehow they had hoped Aristophanes' poetry would have improved here. Denise heaved open the lid to the trunk. It gave a heavy groan, just like her dream. She peered inside and began digging through the clothes, just like the dream. Her Aunt Margaret, a frail lady, stood at the top of the attic stairs, clutching her robe against the morning chill. She watched silently as Denise plowed through the old clothes and oddities.
What's this?
Denise pulled out the camera she and Nathan had seen on their last visit to the trunk. As best she could tell, it had no lens, and it was impossible to tell the front from the back. Her aunt sighed.
You know your uncle. Just something he brought back from one of his trips. We'll have to ask him when he returns.
Denise looked at her. The woman smiled weakly. Her husband had been gone nearly 2 years. At first he'd returned from his documentary filmmaking ventures with strange and weird tales about strange and weird places. Then one day he disappeared and never returned at all. Everyone knew he wasn't coming back. Everyone but his wife. Well, maybe she knew too. Maybe she just wanted to keep hoping. At last Denise reached the bottom of the trunk. There she found a rusty jackknife and a beat-up pair of sunglasses, but it was the large, smooth stone that had her attention. It was about the size of a yellow legal pad and almost that thick. She carefully pulled it out. It was exactly as she remembered it from the last time she was there, and almost the same as she remembered from her dream. Almost, because there were no faint green lines on this rock, nor was there any marker pin. She scowled slightly.
What's wrong, honey?
Something's not right.
Without a word, she plowed through the trunk again, but she found nothing new. She plopped down on the floor cross-legged. Pulling the tablet onto her lap, she began drumming her fingers on it, trying to think. The surface was smooth and hard, but not so hard that she couldn't make faint marks with her fingernails. Her aunt turned and started down the steps.
Why don't I go and fix us some nice hot chocolate?
Denise thanked her and continued to ponder. She knew it had only been a dream, but everything had seemed so real, so true. So why weren't the lines there, and the marker? As she sat there thinking, she absent-mindedly began scratching her name into the soft stone with her fingernail. First a D, then an E, followed by an N. It was no big deal, just faint markings she could easily wipe away. But when she scratched in the final letter, it happened. There was somebody else in the room. She spun around, then sucked in her breath. Not because she was frightened. The person in front of her wasn't frightening at all. It was not some strange creature from some strange dimension. In fact, she knew this person very well indeed, because standing directly in front of Denise Wolfe stood Denise Wolfe. Somehow, by writing her name on the tablet, Denise had created another Denise, exactly like herself.
Chapter 3. A Little Stopover.
Even with his clumsy suit of armor and heavy shield, Nathan was only a few steps behind Josh as they raced for the top of the hill. He wasn't crazy about the idea of seeing Imager, but he was even less crazy about being left behind. Suddenly there was a blinding flash of light just on the other side.
What's that?
Aristophanes was pulling up the rear by a dozen yards. His pudgy little body couldn't keep pace with the others, but between wheezes he managed to gasp,
Must be graduation for upside-downers. Take a peek. Go see what's in store when your lives are complete.
Joshua and Nathan reached the top of the ridge just in time to be hit by another flash of light. It was so bright, so intense that it knocked both of them to the ground. Being the scientific type, Josh found it difficult to believe that light could actually knock a person down, but when he found himself lying face first in the dirt, it was a lot easier to accept. This light had a type of presence, so pure, so intense, that it carried with it incredible power. Since he was already on the ground, and since he was scared to death, he figured it wouldn't hurt to just lie there a bit longer. No real reason, except that he enjoyed living, and he wasn't sure if that would continue when he got up. So there he stayed, cowering on the ground, covering his head right alongside his brother. But not forever. Call it scientific curiosity or just plain stupidity, he wasn't sure, but it didn't matter. The point was, Josh had to see. He had to know what was going on. So, with eyes still clenched and head still covered, he leaned to Nathan and whispered,
We should really take a look.
Are you nuts?
We just can't stay on our faces.
Oh, I bet we can. I got a few more things I want to do before I croak.
Amateur's not going to kill us.
How do you know?
Listro Q says he's too cool, too loving. Come on. Don't you want to take a little peek?
I'll take their word for it. Just lie here and keep quiet.
With eyes still shut, Joshua turned his head and called,
Aristophanes!
Josh, will you keep...
Aristophanes! Listro Q?
There was no answer, only another flash. A flash so bright that even with his eyes closed, Joshua could feel its power wash over him. That was it. He could stand no more. Live or die, although living still had a lot more appeal, Josh had to see. Still clenching his eyes shut, he slowly turned toward the light. So far, so good. No heart attack, no vaporization. These were all encouraging signs. Finally, he pried open one eye. Off to his left, Aristophanes, Lister Q, Samson, even Mr. Hornsberry were all on their knees, faces bowed to the ground in the direction of the light. Carefully, he opened his other eye, then slowly began to shift his gaze toward the light. It grew brighter and brighter, but he kept forcing himself. He knew the dangers of looking into the sun, but somehow this was different. The back of his eyes started to ache, but he pressed on. He had to. He shielded his eyes as he continued to move them until finally, at last, Joshua O'Brien was looking directly into the light. And in it he saw nothing. Well, at first nothing. It was too bright to see anything. But as he squinted, he slowly made out a large, broad plain that stretched below them. It was so clear and so smooth that it looked like water. But it couldn't be water. There were too many creatures standing on it. Millions of glowing creatures. And they were singing. They were all singing to an even brighter figure standing in the center of the plain. A figure carved out of the most intense, blazing light imaginable. Light brighter than the sun, brighter than 1,000 suns. Josh squinted harder. You didn't have to be a genius to know who the figure was. At first it stood directly in the middle of the plain. Then suddenly it was standing much closer. Then far off in the distance. Then somewhere to Josh's left. Then to his right. It was pretty confusing, as if it were everywhere at the same time. Then there was its face. Actually, it was too bright to see the face, but there was no missing the profile. A profile that kept changing. One minute it was a giant bird like an eagle, the next some sort of bull, then an innocent lamb, followed by a lion. Back and forth it changed, again and again and again. It was too much to comprehend. Josh's head began to spin. Everything was too strange, too weird. He grew dizzy. His brain was overloading. Then suddenly, he heard a voice. It shook the ground like thunder. It was so loud that it made his ears ring, yet it was softer than a whisper.
Hello, Joshua.
Josh spun around and gasped. The figure was kneeling directly beside him. His head reeled. Instinctively, he bowed to the ground. Still, he had to see. He had to look into the face. Slowly, with great terror, he forced himself to raise his head. When their gaze finally met, he saw eyes as powerful as the voice, and as tender. They blazed with fire, a fire that burned deep into Joshua's mind. He could not look away, even if he wanted. The eyes held him. They searched his thoughts, seeing inside to his deepest, darkest secrets, things no one knew, things he did in secret, said in secret, thought in secret. things that embarrassed him, suddenly they were all exposed to the light. Suddenly every thought and action of Joshua O'Brien was in plain view of those eyes. But Josh felt no fear, because as penetrating as those eyes were, as much as they saw his darkest secrets, they didn't condemn those secrets. If anything, they seemed to love and understand Josh more because of those secrets. It took Joshua forever to find his voice. When he did, it came out as a little squeak.
Who?
But that was as far as he got. He was too overcome to talk. The figure seemed to understand. He motioned toward the plain below them, toward all the different appearances of himself.
I am he.
Josh wasn't sure if he was going to lose his mind or just die, but for some reason he did neither. It had something to do with the way those marvelous eyes held him. He tried to ask another question.
How?
But he shook his head. He had no business asking anything. He had no business saying anything. At that moment, he had no business being anything. The eyes looked on kindly. The voice roared and whispered.
Ask your question, Joshua O'Brien.
Josh swallowed hard and tried again.
How can you be here and down there at the same time? You're everywhere at once.
Yes, I am.
But one minute you're a bird, then an animal, then...
Your mind cannot grasp my fullness, so it sees me in symbols.
But...
Behold.
The figure pointed to a withered old woman on the plain below them. Unlike the others, she was shriveled and crippled. And unlike the others, she was not glowing. He continued speaking, his voice lowered in quiet reverence.
She's an upside-downer like you.
You mean she's cross-dimensionalized just like...
No, she has graduated.
Graduated?
Behold.
Joshua looked back to the plain. The glowing figure of light was now standing beside the woman. Josh looked back to his side. The figure of light was also there.
Okay, I can handle this, I hope.
He turned back to the plain and watched as the old woman crumpled to the figure's feet and began sobbing. But she wasn't the only one crying. So was the figure. A hush fell over the plain. All singing came to a stop. The millions of creatures watched in speechless anticipation as the figure slowly stooped down to join the old woman. At last he spoke.
I have been waiting a long time for you.
The woman looked up. Tears streamed down her face. Tears streamed down both of their faces. Slowly, the figure reached out his hands and helped her as they rose to their feet. Smiling, he wiped the tears from her cheeks. She looked up into his eyes, her face glowing in love and adoration. Then gently, tenderly, he pulled her into a deep, powerful embrace. And with that embrace came another flash of light. Josh ducked his head as the wave of power roared over him. When it was finally safe, he looked back up and saw the woman was still in the figure's arms. But she was different now, much different. Now she glowed. Now she shared a part of the figure's brilliance, a part of his power. No longer was she bent and crippled. Now she was beautiful, radiant. Now she was young, vibrant, and glowing with the figure's own glory. The two separated but continued gazing into each other's eyes, like lovers who'd been apart for years. Finally, the figure took her hand into his. He said only 4 words.
Come, sit with me.
The entire plain broke into applause, then shouts and cheers as the couple turned and headed through the throng. Josh looked on, his own eyes burning with tears. The back of his throat hurt with emotion. He turned to the figure of light which was now beside him. He tried to speak. His voice was hoarse and raspy.
Do you do that with everyone?
There was no missing the moisture in the figure's eyes as he smiled.
I do that with my friends.
Back in the attic, Denise stared at the newly created Denise. But never known for her shyness, the first Denise immediately demanded,
"Who are you?"
The new Denise answered,
"I'm you. You mean you're a picture of me, like a holograph?" "No, I'm you." "But how? How should I know? You're the one who wrote me." "Wrote? Didn't you just write my name on the tablet?"
Denise looked at the flat stone on her lap.
"Well, no. How could I? I don't have anything to write."
The new Denise sighed.
"With your fingernail. You just scratched my name on the tablet with your fingernail. So here I am." "You mean whatever I write on this thing happens?" "Yeah." "Let me get this straight. You're saying that whatever I write on this tablet becomes real?"
The new Denise shook her head and muttered,
"I didn't know how I could be so thick-headed. Yes, whatever you write on that tablet becomes..."
But she never finished, for immediately Denise reached over and rubbed off the name, and immediately the second Denise disappeared. She took a deep breath and blew it out. A little unsteady, she rose to her feet. Was this really happening? Could this thing, this tablet, really create anything she wrote? Well, balancing the stone on one hand, she started to scratch in her name again until she noticed her fingernail was wearing thin. She changed her mind. Instead, she wrote, "Felt pen." Instantly, there was a black marker in her hand, just like the dream. Denise blinked in surprise. She stared at the marker. Was this true? Was it really happening? And if it was true, what did it mean? What were the limits? Were there limits? Possibilities flooded her mind. She frowned and gripped the marker tighter. Then she started to scrawl out the letters C-A-R, but she stopped halfway through, paused, and quickly changed them to L-I-M-O-U-S-I-N-E, hoping she was spelling limousine correctly. When she had finished, she looked down at the word, took another deep breath, then quickly walked to the window to have a look. Sure enough, outside, parked in front of the house, was a black, shiny limousine. Denise leaned against the wall for support. This was too incredible. With the tablet, it appeared that she could make anything she wanted. Mansions, yachts, castles. But material things had never interested her much. Well, except for a limo or two. One look at her wardrobe said that. Then why, she wondered, why was she the one given the... Wait a minute. Of course, that was it. That's why she'd had the dream. That's why she'd been led to the tablet. It wasn't so she could make her own selfish desires come true. No, of course not. It was so she could help make things better in the world. The thought gave her a little shudder. She breathed harder, faster. What a privilege. She, Denise Wolfe, had been chosen to change the world. Think of it. She would have the opportunity to make things better, to do away with suffering, to stop violence, to end starvation, disease, poverty. She could actually help make things perfect. Now, this was no genie in a lamp time, no make 3 wishes and get whatever you want. Forget the riches, forget the fame. Denise was chosen because she would do something greater. She would fix the world. She felt the weight of the tablet in her hands, its power, its possibilities. But where to begin? The world was in such a mess. Where should she start? How about something small? Yeah, that's it. For starters, she would begin with something... She had it. If she wanted to end the pain and suffering, how about starting off with her mother? Mom, who was filled with so much pain at the hospital. She raised the tablet and wrote the words, "No pain." She finished and waited in anticipation. But nothing happened. Everything was exactly the same. She glanced back out the window. The limo was still there. Nothing else had changed. Or had it? There was only one way to find out. She turned and headed for the stairs. Joshua didn't know how long their conversation lasted. It could have been hours. It could have been seconds. But by the way Nathan, Aristophanes, and the gang were still on their knees, he voted for seconds. The blazing figure of light continued speaking, his voice powerfully tender.
My beloved upside-down kingdom, is in danger.
Yes, I know, but how?
Dear Denise,
Josh thought he heard a sad, heavy sigh.
she no longer trusts me. She is creating a different world. A world she thinks is better than mine. A world where she will invite the merchant of emotions.
Merchant of emotions?
He who controls their emotions.
But how? What can we do?
The figure smiled warmly at Josh's concern.
You will defeat him. As my water bearer, you have my word. As my armor bearer, Nathan has my faith. Together, you two will help Denise understand.
Yes, but why don't
I stop her?
Joshua nodded.
My Denise will no longer listen to me.
you could make her?
The briefest look of pain crossed those magnificent eyes.
She must trust me because she wants to, not because I make her.
Then, reaching out a hand, the figure gently helped Joshua to his feet. Now, of course, Josh wanted to say more, like the only thing he and his brother had ever succeeded at doing was fighting, so how could they save the world? Like, why couldn't Imager do it? Like, why did he need their help? But Josh didn't say a word. He knew Imager already knew. Now he felt his tender, powerful hand resting upon his shoulder.
You are my feet, Joshua O'Brien. You are my hands. You are my voice.
Never in his life had Joshua felt so proud or so helpless. As if sensing his fear, the figure drew him into a gentle embrace. There was no flash of light, no transfer of energy, no graduation. Only the warmth and love of Imager holding his beloved. It was fantastic. Joshua wanted to stay in that embrace forever. But he knew he couldn't, at least now. Finally, they separated. Josh brushed the tears from his eyes and looked up just in time to catch the figure doing the same.
Will I ever see you again?
The figure broke into a gentle grin.
Yes, my dear friend. You will see me. You will see me wherever you look.
With that, Joshua suddenly found himself standing in Feyre. No cross-dimensionalizing, no travel. 1 minute he was standing before Imager, the next he and the entire group stood in one of Feyre's great halls of tapestry.
Chapter 4 Changes.
The halls of tapestry were as dazzling as ever. In every room hung thousands of tapestries, beautiful shimmering tapestries woven from glowing threads of light. Each was a masterpiece. Each represented a life Imager had created. Every living creature imagined had his or her own tapestry hanging in one of these magnificent halls. Nathan was the first to spot the weaver. The old man was pacing back and forth between the tapestries at the far end of the room. Even from that distance, Nathan could tell he was concerned. As the group approached, the weaver glanced up.
"You're late."
That was all he said before returning to his pacing. Aristophanes tried to explain.
They wanted to see Imager, a request we cannot shrug, and by the glow on old Josh's face, it was something he dug.
The weaver shuddered. Apparently even he could not get used to the awful poetry.
What's the problem?
Nathan approached, clinking and clanking in his armor.
What's with these stupid outfits?
The weaver explained,
"Those are your offices." "Yes, they are."
Nathan whined as he tried to adjust the armor.
But it's 3 sizes too big, and its shield thing weighs a ton.
Now, Nathan didn't mean to whine. That was just his nature. As sure as Denise had her temper and Josh his ego, Nathan had his whine. The weaver patiently explained.
"You will grow into that armor, and the shield will come in most handy."
Yes, but...
"This is how he has imaged you." "Yes, it is. And this is how you will stop the merchant."
Merchant?
It was Josh's turn to explain.
The Merchant of Emotions. Imager said that...
Wait a minute. You talked to Imager? When?
I'll explain later. The point is...
I want to know now. When did you talk
Nathan,
to Imager?
For once in your life, try not to be the world's biggest brat.
Who are you calling a...
Gentlemen. I know it's difficult to be civil to each other, but if you will look at these tapestries, you will see we have little time."
The brothers turned back to the tapestries in front of them. Well, something was wrong. Nathan could see it at once. The intricate beauty of their patterns was disappearing. Listerque was the first to speak.
Tapestries becoming unraveled their weave.
It was true. Each of the tapestries was slowly unraveling. Dozens of beautiful designs were coming undone. The glowing threads were being pulled out of their weave and hanging haphazardly in all directions.
"What's happening? They're coming apart."
Mr. Hornsberry spoke up.
"An inappropriate observation. Upon closer examination, you will note that many of the tapestries are actually reweaving themselves."
The group stepped closer for a better look. It was true. Some of the threads were actually coming together again, intertwining, forming their own patterns. But instead of the beautiful, glowing masterpieces, they were forming gross, clumsy designs. Samson chattered off a quick question. The weaver shook his head and answered,
"No, only the tapestries from the upside-down kingdom are being rewoven."
But why? Who's responsible?"
The weaver turned directly to him. He spoke only one word.
"Denise."
The group stood dumbfounded. Finally, Josh asked,
"But how? How could one person do all this damage?"
The weaver looked at him a long moment. Then he turned and stepped forward to one of the tapestries. When he arrived, he pushed it aside to reveal a giant round door. It looked like the door to a bank vault.
"Come with me."
The group glanced to one another.
"Where are we going?"
The weaver busied himself with dialing a combination in the center of the door, so Aristophanes answered.
"If I ain't too mistaken, you'll enjoy this little stroll. Normally, upside-downers are forbidden to enter someone's master control."
The combination was dialed in. The weaver pulled on the handle, heaved open the heavy steel door, and stepped into the darkness. With more than a little trepidation, Nathan and the others followed. Denise couldn't believe what she saw as her limo turned into the hospital parking lot. Outside there were hundreds of people. Most were wearing those silly hospital gowns, the type that never quite close in the back. But no one seemed to care. Not anymore. Everyone was too excited. The limo stopped and Denise threw open the door. Outside, everything was chaos and confusion. Everywhere, patients were running and leaping and laughing. She shouted as she stepped into the mob.
"What's going on? What's happening?"
No one seemed to hear.
"Would somebody please tell me what's going on?"
Finally, an old man turned to her. He was very frail and weak, but he was grinning. From ear to ear, his toothless gums glistened in the sunlight. He cackled,
"Haven't you heard? We're healed. There ain't no pain no more."
With that, he leaped into the air to click his heels. Of course, he failed miserably and fell to the ground in a crumpled heap. But he didn't care, not in the least, unless you call breaking into uncontrollable laughter caring. Denise looked around in disbelief. The place was like a school playground. Old-timers laughed and ran around like children. Pregnant mothers jumped rope. Accident victims played tag. Cancer patients slapped one another on the back, hooting and hollering with joy. The only ones not smiling were the doctors. They kept shouting,
"Please! You're not well! You must come back to your rooms!"
But no one listened. Why should they? Well, the doctors were obviously wrong. There was no pain, no suffering, not anymore. And Denise knew why. She couldn't help grinning down at the tablet in her hands. The words, "no pain," were still written in permanent ink upon the stone. She had done this. She, Denise Wolfe, had single-handedly rid the world of pain. With just 2 words, she had erased all of the world's misery and suffering. Her chest swelled with pride as she shook her head in wonder over what she had so easily accomplished. She started through the crowd to look for her mom. After all, her mother was the inspiration for all this.
Mom, where are you?"
A couple wheelchair patients raced toward her.
Clear the way!
Clear the way!
They nearly knocked Denise to the ground as they sped past and disappeared into the crowd shouting,
Sorry!
Don't worry. You couldn't hurt me if you tried.
Now, she wasn't bragging, just stating a fact. They couldn't hurt her. They couldn't hurt anyone. She had made the world too good for that. She wasn't sure why Imager had created the mess, but she was sure of one thing. With the tablet, she was going to clean it up. She was going to make everything better, a lot better. She gripped the stone more firmly and searched the crowd.
Mom!
Denny? Denny, over here!
Denise turned and spotted her mother hobbling through the crowd. Her face was glowing. All trace of suffering was gone. Instead, she was doing her best to ignore a worried nurse who was pleading with her to sit down.
Don't be silly, I'm fine.
Denise's grin widened as she pushed through the crowd toward her mother. She couldn't wait to tell her that she was the one responsible for... And then Mom came into view and Denise's joy turned to horror.
Mom, your leg!
The woman glanced down at her hospital gown. The lower portion was spattered with blood, but it wasn't the blood that concerned Denise. It was the way the leg had turned and twisted in the wrong direction.
I told her it wasn't healed. I told her it wouldn't hold her.
Mrs. Wolfe laughed.
Nonsense. I feel fine. It doesn't bother me
But Mom, it looks awful. And what's this white thing?
Denise bent down for a better look, but she wished she hadn't. The white thing was her mother's leg bone. It was still broken, still twisted, and now it jutted through the skin.
Mom, sit down!
Sweetheart,
Sit down!
Reluctantly, her mother let Denise help her to the ground. Then, turning to the crowd, Denise shouted,
Is there a doctor? Please, I need a doctor! I need a doctor here right away!
Chapter 5. The Chase Begins.
Wow!
Both brothers entered the large, round room. A single desktop circled the entire chamber like a giant ring. Sitting behind the desk, facing the center, were 24 Faeronians. Each carefully studied a little 3D picture that floated before them. Each carefully adjusted the complex knobs and controls on the desk below those pictures. But that was nothing compared to what floated in the middle of the room. For there, directly in the center, nearly 20 feet high, was a giant 3D projection of Denise. She was in a hospital room arguing with 2 doctors and a nurse over her mother's broken and bleeding leg. The weaver quickly explained to the brothers.
Behind each tapestry is a door leading to that person's master control.
You mean each of us has a room like this?
Of course.
Josh and Nathan exchanged looks.
My assistants here carefully monitor the decisions you make in your weave.
Hold it. I thought you wove those tapestries the way Imager told you.
I do.
Well, and how?
You still have free will. If you refuse Imager's design, you may change it.
But who would want to? I mean, his designs are so incredible.
The weaver nodded and sighed wearily.
Yours is a most stubborn kingdom, Joshua O'Brien. Yes, it is. Many insist on their own weave instead of Imager's.
He motioned to the ring desk and continued.
Here we monitor your every decision, down to the tiniest details.
The details?
They are often what change your life the most.
Josh looked at him skeptically.
Not at first, but 5, 10, 20 years into the future. It is the little choices that change your life. The little choices are often...
He was interrupted by a loud buzzing alarm. One of the Faeronians cried,
Sir, we have another Code 12.
The weaver quickly crossed to one of the desk stations to study the little 3D picture floating above it. It was another image of Denise, but in a much different location.
Put it on the big screen.
The assistant obeyed. Immediately, the big screen image of Denise in the hospital was replaced by another one. In it, she looked awful. She was haggard and very, very frightened. Instead of her usual uniform of baggy pants and t-shirt, she wore some sort of fancy riding outfit, and she carried a large flat stone. She stood on a beach next to a burning bus. Heading toward her was a mob of people, some crawling, others staggering. But they all had one thing in common, their hatred for Denise. They shouted,
"Nightmare! You've created a nightmare! This is awful!"
Tears filled Denise's eyes as she shouted,
No! I created good! This is supposed to be good!
Other voices were heard.
Get the tablet! Grab the tablet! Get the tablet!
She spun around to see another group, hundreds of them. They were awful to look at. Their bodies were broken and twisted beyond belief. Like the others, they staggered and crawled toward her. A third group shouted,
"Monsters!"
Denise twirled to face them. They were equally as ravaged and twisted. Filled with panic, she tried to run, but they came at her from every direction. Angry people, broken people, ruined people. They continued to close in. They were nearly on top of her. She turned to her companions.
Mr. Hornsberry! Samson, do something! Help me!
But there appeared nothing they could do. Back in master control, it must have been a shock for Hornsberry and Samson to see themselves on the projection, but neither spoke a word as they continued watching. Josh turned to the Weaver and shouted over the noise,
So, this is what will happen in the future?
The Weaver nodded.
If she makes the wrong decision in the hospital.
What's that in her hand? It looks familiar.
Aristophanes explained.
The tablet she has found, it changes reality. It's the thing that will bring all of this calamity.
Joshua turned back to the Weaver for more information.
This is the future. Yes, it is. This is what will happen if Denise keeps changing Imager's reality.
It's terrible.
It is nothing compared to what will follow.
The Weaver turned to another assistant.
Punch in 30 seconds beyond what we're viewing.
The assistant obeyed. The pleading Denise disappeared from the screen and was replaced by another creature. It was large, with claws, crystal-clear scales, and huge black leathery wings. Wings that carried it silently through outer space toward a blue, cloud-covered planet that could only be...
Earth! He's heading for Earth!
The Weaver nodded sadly.
That's the illusionist. I thought she was dead. I thought we destroyed her.
Closely, look more. The illusionist is not. Her brother is it.
Her brother?
He is called the Merchant of Emotions. He is the creature you must battle. Yes, he is. He is the one you must prevent from entering the Upside-Down Kingdom.
But he's almost there. How can we stop?
Remember, this is the future you're seeing.
Yeah, but...
Punch up 11, 17, Quadrant E.
Another assistant transferred another image to the center screen. It was a kingdom of towering buildings, crowded roadways, and deafening noise. Noise like 1,000 stereos blasting at once.
This is the present time. This is where he has currently landed. He has enslaved this kingdom as he waits to attack yours. This is where you must stop him.
But how? Imager said something about Nathan's suit of armor, and I'm supposed to...
The Weaver nodded.
Nathan believes in Imager more strongly than you. That armor and shield are his belief, his protection from the merchant's powers.
What about me?
You are the water bearer. You have Imager's water in that water skin.
Josh instinctively adjusted the water skin around his shoulder that Lister Q had given him.
Imager's liquid letters and words are your weapons.
What good is...
Nathan told you how the water melted Searlo?
Well, yes, but...
How it helps you see as Imager sees?
Sure, but...
Its power will surprise you. Yes, it will.
Hold it. You're telling us that...
Suddenly another alarm sounded. The Weaver spun to the screen and shouted,
There is no time to explain! You must stop the Merchant of Emotions before he reaches your kingdom, before Denise invites him into your world.
Turning to Lister Q, he called,
Have you entered their coordinates?
Yes, did I?
Then give him one of the cross-dimensionalizers.
Lister Q reached over and handed Nathan the small control unit.
Still remember you? How to use it?
Well, yeah, but you guys are coming with.
The Weaver shook his head.
Only the rebreathed can handle Imager's weapons. Only you will be able to stop the merchant.
But...
Go!
Again, Josh protested.
I still don't see how we can...
It was Aristophanes' turn for impatience.
Don't worry about it. We'll be here watching the show. Just use them gifts wisely. Now, hurry and go.
Yes, but...
Another alarm sounded.
Go! Now!
Josh looked to his brother. Nathan took a deep breath, pressed the 4 buttons on the cross-dimensionalizer, and they were gone. The Weaver took a deep breath of his own and looked to the rest of the group.
This one's going to be close. Yes, it is.
Back in the hospital, Denise clutched the tablet and shook her head at her mother's doctors, an older gentleman and a younger good-looking one. The older doctor tried to reason.
You don't understand. Pain is good.
No way! Pain causes suffering. It causes misery. Everything's better now that I got rid of it.
Are you blind?
The younger doctor practically shouted. He pointed to her mom's twisted and bleeding leg.
You call that better? Without pain, she doesn't know how badly she was injured. She'll just keep walking on it, making it worse and worse.
Denise didn't like the young doctor, not one bit. He was rude and arrogant.
You're telling me that we need pain?
Yes.
The older doctor insisted.
It's nature's way of saying something's wrong.
You're crazy. I destroyed pain to make the world a better place.
You're wrong.
And you're jealous. Because me and this tablet here, we just put you two out of business.
That's not it. That's not it at all.
He stormed to the window.
Look.
Before anyone could stop him, he leaned back and smashed his hand through the glass of the upper window.
Doctor!
But he paid no attention. Instead, he held out his bleeding hand to her.
Look, no pain.
He spun around and smashed it through the lower window. Again, he held it out, only now it was in much worse shape.
Don't you see? I could do this all day and it wouldn't matter. I could get hit by a truck, burn myself, get sick. Without pain, I'd never know I needed help. Without pain, I'd eventually kill myself.
But Denise had made the world a better place. She wasn't about to let some doctor convince her to change it back. She insisted,
No! I made things better, and that's how they're going to stay.
The younger doctor sneered.
We'll see about that.
Suddenly, he lunged for the tablet. Denise screamed and jumped back.
Get the tablet!
The older doctor and the nurse joined in. Now they had Denise pinned against the wall as they tried to rip the tablet from her.
Stop it!
Denise's mom yelled as she hobbled into the fight.
Stop it!
Denise continued screaming, but it did no good. Hands came at her from all sides. She dropped to the floor and wrapped herself around the stone. She began kicking and biting, anything to keep them away. And then she saw it, between their legs, an opening, and past that, the door. She scampered between the legs and leaped up. In an instant, she was out the door and into the hallway.
Stop! Stop her!
Stop!
She sprinted down the hall and knocked a couple patients off their feet. But it didn't matter, since they didn't feel pain. They just sat there laughing. She came to the end of the hall, looked both directions, and darted to the right. She wasn't sure where she was going, but she could hear the younger doctor closing in from behind.
Stop!
No way. An open door came into view. She dashed into the room and tried to slam the door and lock it, but the younger doctor was too fast. Before she could get it closed, he was pushing against it. She pushed back as hard as she could, but he continued to shove it forward, inch by inch.
Denise, please, be reasonable.
She was losing ground. Any second he'd be inside. Suddenly she had an idea. If the tablet could do anything, then maybe, just maybe, she pulled up the tablet and fumbled for the marker.
Denise!
The door was nearly open. Already his arm and shoulder were squeezing in. Already he was reaching toward her. Furiously, she scrawled the letters with a felt pen until she finally completed the words, "Obey me." But nothing happened. The doctor just kept coming. With a final push, he shoved through and grabbed her. She screamed, but it did no good. Why? What was wrong?
Okay, it's over. Give it to me.
He held out his hand, waiting. Denise's mind raced. Why didn't the tablet work? He grabbed the tablet, but she still wouldn't let go.
All right, if that's the way you want it.
He started prying her fingers loose, one at a time. Suddenly she had it. Of course, he hadn't obeyed her because she hadn't given him an order. The tablet was nearly in his hands, just 2 more fingers to go.
Be a good girl now and let me...
Stop it!
And immediately the doctor stopped. A look of confusion crossed his face. Finally he spoke.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wolf. I don't know what came over me.
Denise watched him cautiously.
I do hope you'll forgive me. May I walk you back to your mother's room?
Denise hesitated, then slowly answered.
Sure.
Just to be safe, she pulled the tablet a bit closer. The doctor held open the door for her, and they entered the hallway. Denise still wasn't 100% sure. Was he just faking it, or had the tablet really worked? And if it worked, did that mean that no matter what she asked, he would have to obey her? She really hated to do it, but there was really only one way to find out.
Excuse me, Doctor?
Yes?
Would you bark like a dog for me, please?
The man instantly dropped to his knees and began to bark. Everyone in the hall stared in amazement. Everyone but Denise. She spoke with a contented smile.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Chapter 6. And now for your entertainment.
At first, Joshua thought they'd cross-dimensionalized back home. This new kingdom looked exactly like any major city in any major country. Towering buildings, masses of people, and traffic backed up for blocks. But it didn't take long to see that things were just a little bit different. First, there was the noise. Deafening. Like 1,000 stereos and TVs all blaring at the same time. Then there were the windows. Actually, the lack of them. In place of windows, there were movie screens. That's right. Whether they were the windows in cars, or the thousands of windows in a skyscraper, or the huge display windows of a department store, every pane of glass had been replaced by a motion picture screen. And every screen was playing a different movie. It was impossible to look anywhere without seeing at least 20 movies playing at the same time. As a result, the people on the street barely moved. Why should they? What was happening on those screens, what filled their vision and blasted into their ears, was 1,000 times more interesting than real life. So they simply stood and stared.
What is this place?
But Joshua barely heard. The noise was too deafening. Not far away, he spotted a lone woman in rags. She seemed to be the only one moving as she pushed a rusty shopping cart down the street. He headed for her with Nathan at his side.
Excuse me, ma'am? Ma'am? Could you tell us where we are? The Kingdom of Entertainment. I'm sorry, I can barely hear you. The Kingdom of Entertainment.
The woman reached into her cart and brought out 2 sets of clear little balls, about the size of marbles. She handed a pair to each boy and motioned for them to put them in their ears. Figuring he had nothing to lose, Josh popped them inside. So did his brother. And suddenly he heard silence. Beautiful, blessed silence. The woman spoke, holding out her hand for payment.
That will be 2,340 jerkins.
Josh and Nathan traded looks. Nathan answered,
I'm sorry, we don't have any of those jerker things. No jerkins? Then give those back before I call the enforcers.
But without them, it's so noisy we won't be able to hear ourselves think.
A voice boomed from behind them.
That's the whole idea.
The brothers spun around to see the same black-winged creature they'd viewed in Denise's master control. Its image was projected upon the glass panes of a revolving hotel door, and it flickered as the panes spun round and round. Hiding behind it was the image of a large, 8-legged type of dog, frightened but obviously trying to sneak a peek at them.
It's the Merchant of Emotions.
The merchant grinned.
Very good.
He gave a sweeping gesture with one of his claws.
So tell me, what do you think of my world?
Your world?
Well, it is now that they've made me their god.
Why would they do that?
The merchant shrugged.
Appreciation, I suppose. All these people you see here wanted to be entertained, so I gave them exactly what they wanted.
Which was?
Entertainment! Non-stop, never-ceasing entertainment. Now they'll never be able to hear themselves think. Most importantly, they'll never again be able to hear Imager's wretched voice. Their only relief is in buying silence, and that, my little friends, costs a pretty jacken.
I should say so. And they've just stolen 4 minutes' worth. And if I keep giving away silence, I'll be as poor as...
Before she could finish, the merchant reached for the machine strapped to his chest and flipped a single switch. A cloud of mist shot from a little nozzle and gently settled upon her stomach. Suddenly she began to cry. Uncontrollably, deep, gut-wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. The brothers looked on in astonishment as she dropped to her knees and continued to weep.
What did you do to her?
Oh, she's just feeling a little sentimental.
But how?
The creature grinned and gave the nozzle a small pat.
Just my little emotion generator.
You mean you can control?
People's emotions? Yes. Well, that certainly appears to be the case now, doesn't it? Would you care for a demonstration?
No!
The merchant smiled as he carefully looked them over.
Yes, well, we'll see. So, Imager has sent you 2 worthless creatures to try and stop my attack upon his upside-down kingdom.
We're not worthless. We've been rebreathed, and we have our weapons.
Josh took a half-step closer.
Yes, a bag of water and a rather ill-fitting suit of armor.
Nathan shifted in discomfort.
You must remind me to give you the name of my tailor. He could do wonders.
Josh had had enough. If they were to stop this merchant thing, then they would stop him. He started toward the revolving doors. Nathan shouted,
Joshua!
Don't worry, he's just a reflection.
Tell that to her!
Nathan motioned to the old lady still crying on the sidewalk, but Josh continued forward. He'd always had plenty of confidence in whatever he did. Why should this be any different?
My, will you look at that, T-Bolt? The Josh is a brave one, isn't he?
The merchant chuckled to the animal still hiding behind his legs. The animal whined and thumped its tail. Joshua called back to Nathan.
Come on! We can take him!
As he approached, he reached down and unscrewed the cap to his water skin.
The Josh has bravery. Shall we see if he has anything else?
In excitement, T-Bolt raced from behind the merchant and leaped onto the creature's chest with more than a little enthusiasm. And with that enthusiasm came plenty of panting and drooling.
Will you get down? T-Bolt, get down! Bad T-Bolt, bad!
It was now or never. Josh took advantage of the distraction and raced for the reflection. He wasn't entirely sure what he was going to do when he got there, but since the water was all he had and since it had proved its power in the past, but the merchant spotted his move. He reached to his emotion generator.
Josh! Look out!
The merchant flipped another switch. A thin mist shot out and struck Josh on the right side of his head. Suddenly, Joshua began screaming in terror. Nathan raced to him.
Josh! Josh, what is it?
But Joshua couldn't speak. He was too terrified. All he could do was point down at the sidewalk and scream.
Josh!
Again he pointed, urgently, desperately, screaming all the time.
I don't understand. What is it?
Joshua was beside himself. Why couldn't his brother see it? It was right there on the sidewalk, monstrous, horrifying. It was an ant, and it was crawling straight toward him. Finally, in desperation, he raced to the nearby wall and cowered against it, whimpering, shaking like a leaf. Wouldn't somebody save him?
Stop it! Whatever doing him, you better now!
Josh strained to hear the words, but the kingdom's noise was returning. He turned toward the merchant to see him laughing. When he spoke, Josh could only make out part of his sentence.
You were no match, and I will suffer.
Apparently, the marbles in Josh's ears were losing power, so he did the only thing he could do. He screamed louder and shook harder. Then he saw the merchant reaching for another switch on his emotion generator and pointing the nozzle at Nathan. After a few more barks and a long howl, the young doctor hopped back to his feet and continued down the hall with Denise. She could tell that he was embarrassed, but she had given him an order and, well, she was the boss. To have that much control felt good, and she had to admit, a little dizzying. Because she wasn't just the boss over the doctor. With the tablet, she was the boss over everybody. Now she had absolute power. Well, not that she ever planned to misuse it, but still, to have so much of it. The elevator doors opened and 2 orderlies rushed out carrying an old man, the same one Denise had met when she stepped out of the limo. The toothless old gentleman who had jumped up and tried to click his heels. Only now he wasn't jumping, he wasn't even breathing. Immediately the doctor was at his side.
What's wrong?
One of the orderlies shouted,
Heart attack.
The doctor ordered,
Set him down. Get a crash cart. Stat. We have a code blue.
The crash carts are all busy. People are dropping like flies out there. Everyone's overdoing it. They're all killing themselves.
Without a word, the doctor dropped to his knees and began pumping the old man's chest. Then he pinched the man's nose and began breathing into his mouth.
What's happening? What's going on?
The doctor explained,
Without pain, no one knows their limits.
He turned from the man's mouth and began pumping his chest again.
Without pain, everyone will die.
The thought caught Denise off guard, but only for a second. If that was the only problem, and if she could control anything, quickly she raised the tablet and scrawled out 2 more words with her marker. They were, no death. And suddenly the old man came back to life, coughing, wheezing, and looking around very wide-eyed, but he was alive. There was no doubt about it, he was living. The doctor stared up at Denise, his own eyes widening in astonishment. Denise grinned.
Well, that should take care of that.
Back in Master Control, another alarm sounded. Aristophanes, Lister Q, Sampson, and Mr. Hornsberry had all been watching Denise on the main screen, and they had all cringed when she made the doctor bark like a dog. But now she was back to using the tablet for good. Now things were getting better, or so they thought.
Alarm? What for? By eliminating death. Didn't a thing good do she?
The Weaver shook his head angrily. He shouted to an assistant,
Punch up the future! Punch up 300 years into the future!
The big screen flickered. Now they stared at an incredibly old and outrageously fat queen. In fact, she was so huge that it took 3 thrones just to hold her. With all the wrinkles and rolls of fat, it was hard to recognize the face. But since this was Denise's control room, and since they were watching Denise, everyone had a pretty good idea who it was. She was so old and fat that she couldn't move. And yet she was sighing in pleasure. Incredible, indescribable pleasure. The reason soon became apparent. The merchant of emotions was standing right beside her, covering her with thick mists of his emotions.
Pull back!
The image pulled back to show more of the scene. Now they could see Denise's thrones were in the middle of a desert, an endless desert surrounded by a thick, putrid air. Air so dark that it was impossible to tell whether it was day or night. Millions of people were crowded around her, coughing and choking, trying to breathe, but finding it impossible. Sampson chattered a question, and the Weaver answered,
Without death, upside-downers will overrun their kingdom and use up all its resources.
It was true. There were no trees or grass or even oceans, just people. Billions and billions of swarming people. Swarming probably isn't the right word because to swarm you have to move. These people were so crowded together that they couldn't move. All they could do was cough and choke and plead. They begged the gigantic Denise.
Please, let us die. Have mercy on us. Let us die, please.
It appeared their bodies had simply worn out. Those who still had arms and legs could no longer use them. Yet they could not die. They were forced to live century after century like this. Still, they had no physical pain. How could they? That had been Denise's first order. But there appeared to be a different type of pain. A pain of the mind. A torture of having to live hundreds of years. A torture of having to survive in this harsh, impossibly crowded world. A torture of knowing things would only grow worse. Aristophanes turned to the weaver.
You'll have to excuse me. I'm usually quite clever. But is this what happens when upside-downers live forever?
The weaver slowly nodded.
In the beginning, when upside-downers turned from Imager, he commanded me to weave death into their world.
This because of?
Lister Q motioned toward the screen. Again the weaver nodded.
To live forever in any kingdom without Imager is impossibly cruel. Without Imager's rule, death is a gift, not a curse. Without Imager, death is mercy.
But why is Denise so phenomenally overweight and insensitive?
She's done away with all of life's struggles. Yes, she has. Without struggles and hardships, she has grown fat and lazy.
Laziness of her body.
And of her mind.
And most dangerous of all, there is a fatness to her soul, a laziness of her spirit.
The group stood looking on in silence.
Still, this is not necessarily the future. If Master Nathan and Joshua are successful in their attempts to stop the merchant, this will all change.
The weaver nodded.
If they can stop him.
Silence again settled over the group. Only the choking and moaning from the screen filled the room. Finally, the weaver could stand no more.
Go back to the present!
Once again, the projected image flickered and changed. Samson began to chatter.
Yes! In case Joshua and Nathan fail, a backup plan would be good.
Again, the weaver agreed.
Because of your closeness to her, she might listen. But the risk of a non-upside-downer in this sort of situation is... I appreciate your devotion, but even if you did go, she still doesn't understand your language. She'd need a translator.
Lister Q offered.
Us have you?
The weaver shook his head.
No, the risk of more than one non-upside-downer there is far too great.
The group stood a moment watching. Aristophanes sighed.
Oh, that's a real shame.
Again, Lister Q agreed.
Yes, but if somebody else from Upside Down Kingdom find could we...
His eyes turned to Mr. Hornsberry.
Of course.
The dog shifted uncomfortably.
Pardon me?
From the Upside Down Kingdom. Need we someone?
Yes, and your point is?
Aristophanes turned toward Hornsberry, also seeing it.
Of course. Someone of great courage.
The weaver nodded and joined in.
Someone of great intelligence.
And wisdom have must he.
Absolutely.
Then, smiling at Mr. Hornsberry, he asked,
Now, who do you suppose that special someone could be?
Mr. Hornsberry swallowed nervously. As the only other citizen from the Upside Down Kingdom, there was little doubt who they were referring to.
I would be happy to volunteer, most happy indeed. However, if you recall, back home I am merely a stuffed animal. Once you return me to the Upside Down Kingdom, I'm afraid I shall once again...
I could adjust your weave. Temporarily, you understand.
Well, that would be most considerate. However...
The group waited in hopeful anticipation.
Well, that is to say...
They continued to wait. Mr. Hornsberry gave another nervous cough. They waited some more. Finally, he sighed.
Oh, very well. If anyone is designed to save the day, I suppose it is myself.
All right, Mr. Hornsberry.
The group cheered and slapped him on the back.
Oh, what a guy!
Lister Q agreed.
A hero is he.
Yes, well, that goes without saying now, doesn't it?
You'll need this.
The Weaver suddenly and quite mysteriously produced another cross-dimensionalizer. Mr. Hornsberry gave him a look.
You perceived that I would accompany Samson all along, didn't you?
The Weaver gave the slightest grin.
I am the Weaver.
Then, without hesitating, he continued with further instruction.
Now, you must do your best to convince Denise to destroy the tablet. And she must return everything to the original weave. Do you understand?
Samson and Mr. Hornsberry nodded. Without another word, and fearing Hornsberry would change his mind, the Weaver stooped down and hung the cross-dimensionalizer around the dog's neck. Then he quickly punched the 4 buttons. And they were gone.
Chapter 7. A Close Call.
I say, this is rather odd.
Mr. Hornsberry looked around the enormous room, with its towering pillars, its full-length windows, and sparkling chandeliers.
Do you have the slightest idea where we might be?
Samson fired back a reply. It was long and loud, but no matter how long or loud, the answer was still your basic, nope. Mr. Hornsberry started to trot around the room, carefully investigating it.
Apparently it is some sort of mansion. A palace by all appearances. Yet, what would Denise be doing in such a residence? And what is that irritating ruckus outside?
Beyond the windows, they could hear an angry crowd shouting and yelling. Before they could look further, a large door at the far end of the room opened, and a tall, stuffy butler appeared. He was stiff, snooty, and, if possible, even more snobbish than Mr. Hornsberry.
May I help you?
That is the reason for your employment, is it not?
Mr. Hornsberry tried to sound even more haughty.
Be a good fellow now and run along to fetch Miss Denise. We would like a word with her.
I beg your pardon, but whom, or shall I say what, is calling?
The butler was better than Mr. Hornsberry had thought. But that was okay. It would be nice to have a little competition for a change. Before he could return an appropriate insult, Samson started to buzz the man's head. The butler appeared unfazed. Instead, he simply turned for the door.
I don't believe you've been dismissed.
The butler tried to swat Samson aside.
Actually, I was about to procure some bug spray.
Little Samson squealed in panic.
No way! Well...
Then, catching himself, Mr. Hornsberry continued with a bit more sophistication.
That is to say, I see no purpose in implementing such barbaric actions.
And while I'm at it, I think I shall call the dog pound. Talking animals can be such a nuisance.
You'll do nothing of the kind.
Denise appeared at the door behind the butler. Well, at least Mr. Hornsberry thought it was Denise. But instead of her usual baggy pants and sweatshirt, this Denise was decked out in a riding habit, complete with riding whip and derby. Mr. Hornsberry quickly trotted toward her, careful to turn up his nose while passing the butler.
Miss Denise!
Denise turned to the man.
That will be all, Chauncey.
As you wish, ma'am.
The butler turned to exit. As he did, he fired off one last comment to Mr. Hornsberry.
Try not to shed on the furniture. Dog hair can be so loathsome.
Now, for the briefest second, Hornsberry wanted to sink his teeth deep into the man's calf. The fellow wanted loathsome, he'd show him loathsome. But somehow he was able to resist the temptation. After all, he did have a reputation to uphold. Meanwhile, Samson, who was also excited to see Denise, began playfully dive-bombing her head. Denise giggled, trying to fight him off.
Hey, fella! Cut it out! Come on now! Stop it!
And just that fast, Samson fell to the ground, unable to fly.
Sammy! Are you okay?
Denise dropped to her knees.
What happened?
I don't know, I just... Oh, of course, I get it.
Get what?
Well, I have this thing to write on.
She held up the tablet.
And whatever I write on it happens.
Yes, we're well aware of that fact.
Well, one of the things I wrote was that people have to obey me.
But I fail to see how...
I told Sammy to stop bothering me, and he had to stop.
Samson chattered a terse reply.
Sorry, little guy, but around here I'm kind of like the boss. However...
She pretended to sound very official.
You hereby have my permission to fly again.
Samson took off and began giving Denise the lecture of her life, though this time he was careful to keep his distance. Mr. Hornsberry didn't bother to translate. He figured Denise would catch the general drift. Instead, he had a few questions of his own.
Would you mind telling me why you are wearing such costly clothes?
Denise laughed, giving her riding whip a couple of slaps against her leg.
Oh, I saw this in a magazine, and it was so expensive, I figured I'd give it a try. You know, to see what the big deal was. When you can have anything you want, it's kind of hard not to go for the best.
Yes, well, I'm afraid that's one of the reasons the Weaver has sent us.
The Weaver sent you? Cool.
He knows all about the tablet.
So he sent you guys to thank me for helping out?
Well, not exactly.
I know these clothes and this palace are no big deal. Anybody could wish for them. But it took some real thinking to figure out how to make this world better for everybody.
Samson chattered off a sharp reply. Mr. Hornsberry carefully translated.
Actually, in your admirable efforts to transform the world to a superior status, it appears you are actually destroying it.
Denise's mouth dropped.
I'm what?
Destroying it.
No way. I'm making it better, a lot better.
Samson chattered his most stinging comment yet.
Sure I am.
Denise argued, not waiting for the translation.
Of course, not everyone understands it's for the best, but they will.
Not everyone?
She nodded somewhat sadly, then motioned toward the balcony doors.
Don't you hear them? All that shouting and screaming outside?
That is directed toward you?
I'm afraid so.
She crossed to the giant pair of doors. As she threw them open, the shouting and screaming increased.
They want me to bring pain back into the world. Can you believe it?
Mr. Hornsberry and Samson moved to the balcony for a better look. Below them were thousands of people, all shaking their fists and yelling. And for good reason. Their bodies were twisted and disfigured beyond belief. Hundreds were doubled over with disease or sprawled out on the lawn, unable to walk. Many looked as if they should have been dead, but of course in Denise's new world that was no longer possible.
A few even want me to bring death back. They just don't get it.
But, my dear Denise, pain and death, they're all part of Imager's plan. Can you not see how you're disrupting his tapestry?
Denise bristled.
Disrupting? I'm not disrupting anything. I'm only making things better.
Mr. Hornsberry translated.
Imager knows what's best. You've ignored his plans and changed the rules.
She shook her head.
No! I've just added a few of my own to fix things up.
And your rules? Are you certain they are fixing things up?
Mr. Hornsberry pointed to the shouting mob below. Denise stared down at the shouting crowd. She tapped her foot, obviously thinking.
You know, you just might be onto something.
Mr. Hornsberry glanced to Samson in smug satisfaction. They'd been there less than 5 minutes and were already solving the crisis. Denise began to nod.
Yes, that's my problem. You're right, there are too many rules.
I beg your pardon?
She continued.
Not only do they have to follow all of Imager's rules, but they also have to follow mine. Of course, that's why they're so unhappy. There's way too many rules to follow.
Miss Denise?
No one's really let them do what they want to do.
Miss Denise!
If you really want people to be happy, you gotta give them freedom.
She broke into a grin.
Of course! Mr. Hornsberry, you're a genius!
Hornsberry gave a shiver of delight in spite of himself.
Well, how exactly has my intellect been of service?
But Denise was no longer listening. Instead, she picked up the tablet and pen and prepared to write.
What are you doing?
Samson hovered over her shoulder for a closer look.
Imager's got all these rules, right? Do this, don't do that. No wonder nobody's happy. What do we need all the rules for?
Before Hornsberry could respond, she answered,
We don't. To really be happy, we need to be free.
She wrote on the tablet as she continued speaking.
We should do only what we want to do. Live only the way we want to live.
She finished writing and flipped the board around for them to see. There were only 2 words: no rules. Immediately, people below the balcony started screaming.
Get her!
Soon the entire crowd started to shout. They began banging on the door below. Denise yelled down at them.
Stop it! I command you to stop!
But they continued pounding on the door. Mr. Hornsberry yelled,
I thought they had to obey you.
They do! I don't understand why.
Suddenly she broke into a sheepish grin.
Of course!
What?
I just wrote that there are no rules, right?
That is correct.
So now they don't have to obey me. Now they don't have to obey anyone.
If that's the case, might I inquire if you have an alternate entrance?
Sure. Why?
Suddenly the crowd broke through the front doors, swarmed into the mansion, and started up the stairs.
So we may make a hasty retreat.
In the kingdom of entertainment, the merchant's image still flickered in the revolving door, and Joshua still cowered against the building. Nathan shouted,
Joshua! Joshua, can you hear me?
But Joshua was too busy screaming to hear anything. Nathan twirled back to the merchant.
What was that? What did you hit him with?
Why, isn't it obvious? I just shared a little bit of terror with him.
Only then did Nathan see the merchant had pointed the nozzle at him. Before he could move, the merchant flipped another switch, and another cloud of vapor shot from his emotion generator. Nathan tried to raise his shield and block the mist, but he was too late. It hit him dead center in the chest. Yet nothing happened. Unlike Joshua or the silence peddler who was still on her knees sobbing, there was no uncontrollable feeling, no all-consuming emotion. Puzzled, Nathan looked down. Sure enough, there was the mist. It rested right there on his breastplate. So why had nothing happened? Why had... And then he realized. The mist hadn't reached his body because of the armor. That clunky armor he hauled around had finally served a purpose. But not for long. For even as he watched, he could see the tiny droplets of moisture eating through the metal, turning it to a liquid goo, working its way closer and closer to his skin. He spun back to his brother.
Joshua! Joshua, can you hear me?
But Joshua was too busy screaming. At least he looked like he was screaming. Nathan could no longer hear. His marbles of silence were wearing off. The roar of the kingdom's speakers and movie screens filled his head. The merchant fired off another cloud of mist. This time Nathan was fast enough to block it with his shield. But when the mist hit, the shield itself started to dissolve. Nathan had no alternative but to turn and start running, but not away. No, he would not desert his brother. Instead, he ran to the silent peddler's cart and grabbed 4 more little marbles. He quickly slipped 2 into his ears and rushed back to Josh with the other pair.
What are you doing?
He reached down to his generator and fired off 2 more clouds of mist. Nathan was so busy helping his brother that he didn't have time to raise his shield and defend himself. Both volleys hit him on the armor of his right leg. But Nathan wasn't concerned about those hits. He was concerned about the first one, the one whose mist had finally eaten through his breastplate. Already he could feel its wetness touching his skin, and with that wetness came an uncontrollable emotion. Worry. Worry about everything. Joshua, Denise, friends, school. He even began worrying about worrying. He knew it wasn't real. He knew it all came from the merchant, but he also knew there was nothing he could do to stop it. He dropped to his knees and cried,
This is not happening!
The merchant of emotions laughed.
You think that's something? Wait until those other emotions eat their way through to you.
Frantically, Nathan looked to his right leg armor. The other emotions were quickly dissolving the metal just as the first one had. He cried, fighting against the worry.
No! No!
The merchant continued laughing. Nathan screamed, but it did no good.
No! No! No!
The emotion was too strong to fight. In a final desperate act, he cried,
Imager promised we would win! Imager promised!
And with that cry, the strangest thing happened. As Nathan shouted, as he declared Imager's promise, the mist of worry began to evaporate. Nathan could actually feel the dampness start to leave his chest. And as it left, so did the worry. Amazed, he shouted again.
Imager promised! We'll win! We will win!
To his astonishment, not only did the moisture evaporate from his chest, but the hole in his breastplate began to seal. The metal was actually sealing itself, becoming as smooth and shiny as if it had never been pierced. He looked down to his right leg armor. The same thing was happening there. He looked to his shield for the earlier hit. The same thing. What had the weaver said?
That armor and shield are his belief, his protection from the merchant's powers.
Of course, that was it. They were his belief. They were his trust in Imager. Somehow, as he held on to Imager's promise, he had activated their power. Now the armor was as good as new. Slowly, and with great resolve, Nathan rose to his feet and turned to face the merchant. Now, he wasn't crazy about it, but by the looks of things, it was time for a little showdown. Quickly, the merchant fired off another round of emotion, and then another, but Nathan blocked each one with his shield. As they struck the metal, they spattered loudly and evaporated with a hiss.
What has the Nathan done? What has he done to my emotions?
Nathan turned back to his brother, who was still screaming in terror. He'd already shoved the marbles of silence into his ears, but it did nothing to stop the fear.
Josh, you've got to listen to me.
But Joshua was still overwhelmed. What could he do? How could Nathan stop the... And then he spotted it. The mist the merchant had fired at his brother. It was still on the side of his head, still glistening in the blue-green light of the surrounding TV screens. Nathan reached out his armored glove toward it. Ever so gently, he touched the moisture. It spattered and hissed viciously. Josh blinked. Nathan touched some more. And every place he touched, the moisture evaporated until it had completely disappeared. Josh blinked again, then shook his head, trying to get his bearings.
What happened?
Nathan leaned closer and looked into his eyes. As best he could tell, the terror his brother had been experiencing was gone.
What happened?
It's the merchant.
Nathan pointed toward the revolving doors.
He was controlling you with...
But when Nathan turned, he saw the merchant was no longer there. He had disappeared.
Look!
Josh struggled to his feet. He pointed to the windows of the hotel, then the other buildings.
The TV and movie screens. They're gone. All of them. They're all glass again.
And the noise. It's also gone.
Nathan pulled the marbles from his ears to make sure. It's true. Things were peaceful and quiet. Well, as peaceful and quiet as any big city can be, if you don't count the honking horns, squealing brakes, and screaming people.
Do you see him?
Josh looked around. Nathan shook his head.
He's not here. He must have left.
Good.
At least for the people of this kingdom.
So, where do you think he'd go? I mean, after he left this kingdom, where would he...
Josh came to a stop. He turned to Nathan, his eyes widening in concern.
Quick! The cross-dimensionalizer!
Knowing what he was thinking, Nathan pulled the cross-dimensionalizer from his pocket and shouted into it.
Lister Q, you have to get us to Earth, now!
The unit crackled to life.
At your home, not is he. One more kingdom, visiting first is he.
Then send us there. We have to stop him.
The answer came,
Got it, do I?
The brothers exchanged looks. In learning how to fight the merchant, they nearly lost the first battle. Hopefully, they'd be ready for the next. Nathan reached down to press the buttons.
Chapter 8. The Out-of-Timers.
Now where are we?
Nathan shook his head. At first glance, it looked like some kind of overgrown park, but a very weird overgrown park. There were lots of trees, yet they were all perfectly straight and had no branches. They were planted in single file and covered with ivy. Below them were wide, overgrown paths of concrete that stretched as far as the eye could see. And on those paths were... could it be? Yes, they were cars. Broken down, rusted out cars. Hundreds of them. which meant those concrete lanes weren't pathways at all, but streets. And the branchless trees in straight lines? What else but telephone poles? Then there were the people. Nathan saw them sitting inside the cars and on top of them, chatting away. Like the cars in the rest of the kingdom, they were dirty and broken down. Hair messed, faces unshaven, sporting the latest fashion in worn and tattered clothing. Then there was the smell. Their smell. It was so strong that it made Nathan's nose tickle. It was a safe bet that soap and water wasn't something this kingdom had discovered yet. Or if it had, then like the streets, cars, and telephone poles, its citizens simply didn't care enough to use it. And speaking of not caring, no one seemed too surprised when the brothers suddenly cross-dimensionalized in front of them. Josh called to a nearby car. Its doors had rusted off, and it was filled with a handful of elderly people.
Excuse me, could you tell us where we are?
At first, no one bothered to answer. They just continued their conversation.
Excuse me!
Finally, a ragged, white-haired man from the front seat shouted,
"We can't tell you where you are, but we can tell you where you arrived."
Nathan threw a look to Josh.
I'm sorry, what?
We were out of timers.
Out of timers?
That was correct. We were out of timers.
Again, the brothers traded glances.
What do you mean, were? What are you now?
We had no now, nor will we have one in the future.
What?
What do you mean you have no now?
The man turned to the group in the back seat.
I had forgotten how stupid youth was.
The others chuckled and clucked their tongues in agreement. The white-haired man turned back to Joshua.
We neither had a now in the past, nor will we have a now in the future. We will think only of our past or of our future. We have not lived, nor will we ever live, in the now.
Nathan turned to his brother.
You're the brain. What's he saying?
I'm not sure, but I think he's saying these people don't have a present.
What?
It sounds like they can remember the past okay, and they can think about the future, but they don't have a now.
They don't have a now?
They can't enjoy the present.
That's awful.
It was awful.
The white-haired man agreed.
And it will be awful.
Is that why everything is falling apart? Because there is no now to fix things up?
We have fixed things and we will fix things, but we can't fix things now because
there is no now. Yeah, I got it. But who is responsible for this?
There never was an is, nor will there be an is.
All right. Who was responsible for this?
A beggar from the back seat spoke up.
The creature with the 8-legged pet. The creature with all the emotions returned to us.
The merchant!
He'd been here before?
Yes, many times.
And he's here now?
He was here, and he will be here, but...
I know. But there is no now, so he's not.
The beggar nodded with satisfaction. The group turned to one another and resumed speaking of the past, recalling how the merchant had cast his spell, how he had stolen their now, how they could only have feelings and emotions for the past or the future. Nathan tried to listen patiently, but it wasn't long before he broke in.
Don't you guys want to do something? Don't you want to fight to get these now feelings back?
Oh, well, we had tried in the past, and we'll try in the future.
But now! What about now?
There was and will be no now.
Nathan sputtered in frustration.
Don't you see? The future will always become the now. And then you won't be able to enjoy it or do anything about it because it's now.
The group in the car looked at him blankly. He tried again.
You will never do or enjoy anything because when you try to, it will no longer be the future, but it will be the present.
The group shrugged and turned back to their conversation.
Doesn't anyone care?
There was no answer. Josh tried another approach.
Okay. Why don't you just tell us where he's going? I mean, where he was going.
An elderly woman with a fur hat spoke from the front seat.
Into that swamp. When they heard you had arrived, the two of them raced into that swamp.
Joshua and Nathan turned in the direction she pointed. Not far away stretched a huge swamp, so large it could have been a small sea. It was covered with a thick vegetation and shrouded in a dark, impenetrable fog. Nathan asked nervously,
In there?
The beggar nodded.
That's right. They ran in there, and someday we will follow.
The other passengers nodded, then resumed recalling their past and dreaming of their future. Josh motioned to Nathan.
Come on, let's get 'em.
In there?
Of course.
By ourselves?
I don't see any other volunteers. Come on!
Joshua turned and headed for the swamp. Nathan hesitated a moment, then turned back to the car and tried one last time.
You sure nobody wants to help?
Yes, we will help. Someday we will.
Nathan let out a heavy sigh as he realized that someday would never arrive, and when it did, it would be gone. At last he turned to join his brother, his armor clunking with every step. Strange, the metal suit fit a lot better since their first encounter with the merchant. Nathan wondered if he'd gained weight or grown a bit, and the shield, it didn't seem nearly as heavy. But that did little to relieve his fears. The swamp loomed before him just as dark and foreboding as ever. Back at Master Control, one alarm sounded after another.
What's she doing now? Project her image.
An assistant transferred another image to the center screen. In it, Denise, Mr. Hornsberry, and Samson were racing toward a beach. Behind them was an angry mob screaming,
Get the tablet!
Close in on Denise. Let's hear what she's saying.
The assistant obeyed as Aristophanes and Listoque leaned forward for a better listen.
Hurry!
Denise shouted as they arrived at the bright, sunny beach and started trudging through the sand.
The beach people will protect us. Look how happy they are.
Unlike the wretched souls pursuing them, the crowd on the beach seemed to be having a great time. Denise cried to Mr. Hornsberry.
See? Not everybody hates what I've done.
The group in Master Control also saw. Unfortunately, they saw too much. Hundreds of people staggered about on the beach, either drunk or on drugs or both. Everyone seemed out of control, screaming, shrieking, dancing, beating on each other, and, well, if you could name it, they were probably doing it, and worse. Mr. Hornsberry shouted over the din.
I fail to comprehend what has transpired.
Samson chattered in agreement.
I added the one thing I'd forgotten. Freedom.
She dodged a couple beer bottles flying in their direction.
If you really want people to be happy, then let them be free to do whatever they want.
I understand that you've removed the rules, Miss Denise, but
it shouldn't be like this. Something's wrong. Something's not... Look out!
She pushed Hornsberry to the side just as a school bus roared past them. It missed the group by mere feet as it slid past, throwing sand all over them. Apparently, the driver of the bus felt no need to obey the road rules. But the screaming, hysterical children inside the bus obviously thought he should.
Oh, what was that about?
Mr. Hornsberry staggered to his feet, coughing and brushing himself off. Before Denise could answer, she spotted a mom and a dad pleading with their little 5-year-old. Well, actually, she wasn't so little. In fact, she was as wide as she was tall, and for good reason. She was cramming her mouth with so many chocolate bars that she could barely breathe. The goop covered her face, her hands, her entire body. And still she continued to eat, practically choking as she shoved in one bar after another.
What are you doing?
Denise turned to the parents.
Make her stop! She's going to get sick! Make her stop!
We're trying, but since there are no rules, she won't listen to us. She won't stop.
Denise threw a look over her shoulder. The angry mob, the hundreds of broken and twisted people were gaining on them. Before she could respond, another group joined her from the volleyball courts. They were young people, very angry young people. Their leader, a blonde-headed surfer, shouted,
We want to talk to you. We want to talk to you like now.
What's wrong?
It's the radio stations. They've gone off the air because nobody wants to work anymore.
What?
A freckle-faced girl in a scant bathing suit complained.
And not just the radio stations. The malls are closed too, and the theaters.
Wait a minute. I don't understand.
Without rules, nobody wants to do anything, so nobody does anything.
But they have to work. They have to eat.
Well, not when they can steal.
Steal?
Of course. Everybody takes whatever they want from whoever they want.
Frustration filled Denise and tightened her throat.
But it's not supposed to be like this. Having no rules is supposed to...
She was interrupted by the roar of the bus. It had spun around and was heading straight for them, the driver behind the wheel laughing hysterically.
Look out!
Denise dove to the ground as the bus roared by, missing her by inches. But the teens weren't so lucky. It slammed into the group, running over many of them.
No!
But thanks to the tablet, they weren't dead and they felt no pain, though their bodies were smashed and destroyed beyond recognition. The bus continued to slide until it plowed into a nearby refreshment stand, destroying it and wiping out dozens of other people. As it skidded back onto the road, it veered too sharply to the left. Tires screeched and smoked before it finally toppled over, rolling once, twice, the children inside screaming before it finally settled to a stop on its back. The air was filled with dust and screams of children. They were trapped inside with no way out. Suddenly, the engine exploded and caught fire, spewing thick black smoke into the bus. The children coughed and choked. Some tried to crawl out the windows but couldn't. Others pressed their faces to the glass, banging on it, begging for someone to come rescue them. But no one did. Denise stared in horror as the smoke filled the bus. She turned to the crowd and cried,
"Isn't anybody going to help?"
A nearby lifeguard turned over on his blanket for a better look, but he did not move. A policeman quit his volleyball game and watched with interest. Others drew closer, but only for a better view. Denise was beside herself.
We've got to help them!
And ruin the show?
The elderly woman adjusted her beach chair to see better.
Why should we care?
Because they're going to die!
People don't die anymore, remember?
What about their pain?
The policeman reminded her.
There is no pain.
You're just going to sit and let the bus burn up?
Should be fun.
Denise spun back to the bus, hot tears burning her eyes, as one child after another began sliding from the windows, overcome with smoke. This wasn't the kingdom she wanted. Nothing was turning out like she'd planned. Nothing at all. She looked at the tablet in her hand. If she could just remove some of the commands. But every one was written in the same permanent marking pen. Each and every command was impossible to erase.
Chapter 9. The Invitation.
Josh, where are you? Over here. Where? Right over. Ouch! That's my foot.
Sorry.
Ow, that's my other one.
It was dark in the swamp. So dark that the brothers couldn't see a thing, not even each other.
This is impossible.
Nathan waded through the smelly ooze that clung and tugged at his every step. Then there was the dense undergrowth of branches that continually slapped him in the face.
How are we supposed to find the merchant if we can't even see where we...
Listen.
I don't hear any...
Nathan did his best to keep quiet. Not an easy trick when you're standing in muck and sinking to your waist, or when it's so dark that you can't see, or when you happen to be a world-class whiner. But with great effort, he somehow managed to hold off complaining until he finally heard...
What is that? It sounds like... panting. Like a giant dog. T-Bolt! That means we're right next to them.
But where?
In the darkness, Nathan heard a faint click that sounded like a switch being flipped. Then he heard the gentle sound of falling mist.
How come Imager gave you that suit of armor?
What?
It's not fair. You always get the good stuff.
What are you talking about?
It's just like at home. Mom and Dad always treat you better.
Josh!
Just 'cause you're the baby.
What's wrong with you? Joshua?
He heard a faint chuckle just a few feet away, and his blood went cold. There was no mistaking its owner.
Sounds like that Joshua is feeling a little jealous.
This was followed by more sounds of panting and slurping, obviously from T-Bolt.
You always get what you want.
Where are you?
Just 'cause of that stupid hip of yours.
It's the merchant. He's controlling your emotions. Where did he spray you?
Everyone's always feeling sorry for you.
Reaching toward Joshua's voice, Nathan tried to take hold of him. But he only caught a part of his shirt and the water skin hanging around his neck. His brother shouted as he yanked away.
Get back!
The shirt slipped through Nathan's armored fingers, so did the water skin, but not before his sharp metal glove ripped a gash into the top of it.
Now look what you've...
But that was as far as Josh got before the glow stopped him. The glow of water. In the utter blackness, the liquid spilling from the tear gave off a faint light.
It's image as words.
Nathan spun around to see the creature just a few feet from them. He was covering his eyes and screaming,
Put it away! Put it away! People, come!
He turned and waded deeper into the swamp.
Not so close, you nincompoop, not so close!
The giant animal splashed after him. Nathan turned back to Joshua. In the faint glow, he could see the merchant's moisture glistening on his brother's arm. He reached toward it.
Here, let me touch that and...
Look how you ripped my water skin! It's no fair! Your stuff always lasts longer than...
Nathan's glove finally touched the moisture. There was a loud hiss as the emotion boiled off of Joshua's skin. His brother blinked and shook his head as his senses returned.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
He gave his head another shake.
Where's...
There was a distant snapping of twigs. They both turned to see T-Bolt disappear into the darkness after his master.
Let's get them! But we have to stop them before they leave for Earth!
But how? We can't see a thing!
Josh held up the water skin with the light glowing from its ripped top.
We got this water, come on!
But his emotions, they nearly had you again!
Just keep fighting them off with that armor of yours. You're doing great.
Oh, yeah, but...
You defend us with your armor. I'll use this water to light our way. Come on!
Before Nathan could argue, Josh started into the darkness. He held the water skin out in front of him, preventing any more from spilling out of its torn opening, while using its glow to guide each of their steps. The going was much faster now, and soon they spotted the merchant. As usual, he was berating T-Bolt as they stumbled and staggered through the impenetrable darkness.
No! You're the pet! I'm the master! You go first!
T-Bolt whined and panted and slobbered in protest.
Merchant!
The merchant spun around, and for the first time since they'd met, Nathan saw fear on the creature's face.
Get away!
He shielded his eyes against the light of the water skin.
Keep that water away from me!
Josh held the water out a little further.
Oh, so this makes you a little nervous, does it?
Josh, be careful!
That's right. Come any closer, and I'll fire!
The merchant reached to the emotion generator strapped to his chest. Joshua continued to slosh forward in the swamp.
We're not afraid of you.
The merchant flipped another switch.
Have it your way.
Look out!
Without thinking, he leaped in front of Josh to block the mist with his shield. It struck the metal with a violent hiss, then was gone.
Thanks. You're getting pretty good at that.
Nathan grinned back, as amazed as he was nervous.
Keep your distance. Stay away with that water!
He reached for another switch. Nathan raised his shield in preparation. Things were starting to make sense now. It was just as the Weaver had said. They each had their own weapons. Nathan his armor, Joshua his water. And if they worked together, maybe, just maybe, they could defeat the merchant. The creature fired off another emotion. Nathan easily deflected it with his shield.
Let's get him!
Nathan nodded and they started forward.
I'm warning you!
The merchant backed up. He began firing one emotion after another in rapid succession. But with Josh's light, Nathan could see each cloud of mist coming and was able to block it.
T-Bolt! Attack!
But T-Bolt was too busy running in the opposite direction to be doing much attacking.
T-Bolt!
As the brothers continued toward him, Josh held out the water.
Sure you don't want a little drink?
The merchant began to tremble.
The Joshua must keep that away! The Joshua does not know its power!
Nathan was not surprised at the merchant's fear. He remembered all too well the water had destroyed his evil sister's kingdom of Sirlo. Josh adjusted the rip at the top of the water skin so even more of the glow poured out. The glow that seemed to blind the merchant, paralyzing him with fear.
Please! Have mercy! Have mercy!
They were only 2 steps away now. The creature dropped to his knees, cowering in fear.
Have mercy! Have mercy!
Josh came to a stop and raised the water skin over the creature's head.
Please, I'll do anything that Joshua asks. Please, please.
Anything?
Yes.
You'll return to your own world? You'll leave the Upside-Down Kingdom alone?
Put it away, please.
You'll leave the Upside-Down Kingdom alone?
The children on the bus had slipped from the windows, and still none of the beach people moved to help. In fact, they actually started to complain.
That's it?
No more explosions? No one's gonna catch fire?
Denise turned to them in astonishment.
Are you crazy? Do you want to see awful things?
That's right. We need some type of entertainment.
Yeah, entertain us. You've taken everything else away. The least you can do is entertain us.
Those around him started to agree. Others joined in. They began approaching her. Denise started to back away. They grew louder, more demanding. Another set of voices came from behind her. Denise whirled around to see the first group from the mansion. They had finally arrived and were also closing in. Others approached from other directions. Then there were the mangled teens who had been hit by the bus.
Monsters! You made us like monsters!
Some walked, others staggered. Many could only drag themselves toward her. Tears filled Denise's eyes.
No! I created good! This is supposed to be good!
Denise turned, trying to run, but they were coming at her from every side. Angry people, broken people, ruined people. She turned to her friends.
Mr. Hornsberry! Samson, do something! Help me!
But there was nothing they could do. The mob closed in on her.
Don't you understand? I was trying to make things better!
Tears streamed down her face. They were nearly on top of her. She pulled the tablet closer and cried,
No! Don't you see? I just want everybody to...
And suddenly, she had an idea. She reached for her marker and began to write. They lunged for her, but not before Denise had finished writing. She shouted,
I just want everybody to...
She spun around the tablet to reveal the words, Feel Good. The Merchant of Emotions let out a screeching laugh.
Too late! You're too late!
And instantly he vanished, without a trace, except for the giant eight-legged pet who started to whine at being left behind. Back in Master Control, alarms and lights flashed everywhere. Aristophanes cried,
What's happening?
Wrong what's?
Denise has given the invitation.
What?
She's invited the Merchant of Emotions into the Upside-Down Kingdom.
Chapter 10, Round 1.
A shadow fell across the angry mob. They looked up from Denise and into the sky as a huge, leather-winged creature blocked the sun, then dove directly toward them.
It's heading straight for us!
Others in the crowd screamed as they started running, hobbling, and dragging themselves away. Denise could only stand staring. She watched as the creature swooped down in front of her and landed directly behind the people.
Please! I mean the Upside-Downers, no harm. It is urgent that I speak to the Upside-Downers. You must listen to me.
The pleas sounded earnest, and many in the crowd began to slow.
It is so very important. Please.
Soon they came to a stop. Some began to turn, listening carefully to what the creature had to say. It folded its wings and preened a few crystal scales. The braver and more curious took a step closer. Others followed. When it appeared to have most everyone's attention, it spoke again.
Please, I am here to help.
The creature tried to look friendly and smile. Not an easy job when you have a beak for a mouth. The group murmured, uncertain, until the father of the chocolate bar eater stepped forward.
Who are you?
He was obviously trying to sound courageous, and he might have pulled it off if his voice wasn't 2 octaves higher and shaking like a leaf. Denise found her own voice and shouted,
Don't listen to her! It's the illusionist!
Mr. Hornsberry cleared his throat from beside her.
Actually, it's the Merchant of Emotion.
Denise ignored him and stepped closer to the creature.
You're supposed to be dead. We destroyed you in the Sea of Justice.
The creature turned from the crowd to face her.
The Denise did not destroy me. The Denise destroyed my awful sister, the illusionist.
She was your sister?
The creature bowed his head as if embarrassed.
Alas and alack, the illusionist was the black sheep of the family, and though her loss caused us great pain, we knew it was for the best, and for that we thank the Denise.
Samson chattered what sounded like a warning, but Denise didn't need anyone to tell her to be careful.
Why are you here? What do you want?
She took another step forward.
I am the Denise's servant. The Denise summoned me here. What does the Denise want?
Me?
The great Denise summoned me with her wondrous tablet.
Denise frowned, glancing down at the flat stone in her hand. Once again, the father of the chocolate bar eater spoke.
Look, Mr.
Merchant. Just call me Merchant.
Well, Mr. Merchant.
The father took a step closer. Others followed behind.
The point is, Denise here has made our lives unbearable and...
Unlivable!
Impossible!
And we've decided we must stop her.
Other members of the group agreed. They moved closer. As they approached, the merchant reached down and adjusted something strapped to his chest.
It's the emotion generator!
What are you doing?
He turned to her and grinned.
Just setting my little machine here to maximum strength.
Machine?
Mr. Hornsberry cried as he hopped from side to side.
It's the emotion generator! The emotion generator!
Pointing a nozzle at the angry crowd, the merchant chortled.
I think it's time they loosen up a bit, don't you?
He flipped a switch, and a mist shot out over half of the group. Suddenly, they broke into laughter. Uncontrollable, back-slapping, hold-your-sides laughter. Many dropped to their knees, trying to catch their breath, but it did little good. They couldn't seem to stop.
What did you do? What was that?
Just a little laughter.
He redirected the nozzle toward the other half of the crowd.
And how about some peace for you folks?
He flipped another switch, and another cloud of mist shot out, raining down upon the rest of the group. Suddenly, they broke into dreamy smiles. Many closed their eyes, rocking back and forth as if they were in their own world, as if everything was perfect with no need to worry about anything.
Oh, stop him! He must be...
The creature spun around and gave both Hornsberry and Samson a squirt as well.
Sammy! Mr. Hornsberry!
But they no longer seemed to hear. If they did, they no longer cared. They simply closed their eyes and broke into mindless smiles.
What have you done? What have you done?
Your humble servant has done nothing. The Denise is the one who invited me. The Denise is the one who commanded that all upside-downers must feel good.
Denise looked down at the tablet. It was true, the words feel good were just as bold as ever. She looked back to the crowd of laughers. By now they were rolling on the ground, gasping for air, while those hit by the peace mist were also sinking to the ground, apparently finding no need to stand.
How long will this last?
The Denise wants upside-downers to feel good, doesn't she?
Yes, but how?
If that's what the Denise wants, that's what she will get.
But when will it wear off?
Oh, I'm afraid, like your tablet, the effects of my emotions are permanent.
Permanent? The word hit Denise hard.
But they can't get up. They can't go anywhere. They can't do anything.
Well, that is correct. The upside-downers will never go anywhere or do anything again.
But they have to eat. They have to...
The merchant shook his head.
If the upside-downers always feel good, why should they?
You mean they'll just...
Stay here forever. That is correct.
But they'll starve to death.
The Denise has destroyed death, remember?
So they'll just stay here until they shrivel up for lack of food?
Or water. Mm-hmm. They'll stay here until they turn to dust and simply blow away.
But you just can't...
I have no choice. The Denise wrote it on the tablet.
She turned and stepped toward the crowd, yelling,
You guys can't sit here like that. You've got to get up and do something. Get up! Get up!
Those who bothered to respond only laughed or smiled dreamily.
Mr. Hornsberry,
She turned to the dog, then to Samson.
do something!
But they sat on the sand, smiling away. Fighting back her panic, Denise turned and walked into the sitting crowd.
What about you?
She shouted at the father who had tried to be the hero.
What about your daughter? Don't you want to save her?
The man closed his eyes and smiled. She waded further into the group, toward the laughers. She spotted the teen surfer and shouted,
You can't sit here forever. Don't you want to do something? Be something?
The boy laughed all the harder. The merchant sighed, making it clear that Denise had made quite a mess with the tablet. She looked around. What had she done? She was supposed to make things better. She was supposed to help their lives, not ruin them. But now the people were not only twisted and crippled or crazy and out of control, but now they were laughing insanely and smiling mindlessly. By trying to make a dream world, she had quite literally created a nightmare. Angrily, she brushed at the tears springing to her eyes and demanded,
What am I supposed to do? How can I make it better?
The merchant looked down to the ground and shrugged.
Perhaps... No, that would never work.
What?
Well, I don't think...
Tell me!
Well, it's just... Well, if the tablet were turned over to someone more experienced.
Denise looked at him.
After all, the Denise was right. She did improve upon Image's work. Once she took charge, things did become better. For a while. But
what?
The Denise simply did not have the experience.
And you do?
Again, he looked to the ground.
I cannot do it on my own, of course not. But together, the Denise, with her great understanding of upside-downers, and I, with my vast experience, together, we could make this the great world the Denise dreamed of.
Denise motioned to the crowd.
And all this will stop.
Not only will it stop, but together, we will make this world perfect.
Denise looked back to the tablet in her hands.
But how will I know?
Again, the merchant tried to smile.
Well, I guess the Denise will just have to trust me.
She frowned. How? How could she trust him? Look what he did to these people, turning them into mindless zombies, insane laughers. And yet, he was only following orders. Her orders. It really wasn't his fault. It was hers. The merchant stepped closer.
The Denise would not give up power. She would simply share it.
I will make no decision without the Denise. I give the Denise my word.
Denise felt herself weakening. It wasn't as if she was giving up control. She'd just have a partner. She turned to him and swallowed.
You promise?
Cross my hearts and hope to die. Please, just let me touch it. The Denise may hold it, only allow me to touch it.
And things will be better.
Things will be marvelous. Perfect.
Gently, the merchant reached out his claws.
Please, it will only be for the good of the people. Your people.
Denise looked back to the crowd of howling laughers and mindless smilers. A crowd that would remain that way forever, unless...
For them.
The merchant whispered sincerely.
For them.
Finally, she began to nod. Then slowly, she reached the tablet toward the merchant. And just as his claws touched the stone, Joshua and Nathan appeared. Oh, and one other traveler, an 8-legged dog. As Denise turned toward them, the merchant took advantage of the distraction and ripped the tablet from her hands. But his possession was short-lived, for when the dog saw him, it broke into a grin and raced toward him at full speed. The merchant cried,
No! T-Bolt, no!
But love knows no bounds. Before the merchant could stop him, T-Bolt leaped onto him with his front paws, all 4 of them, and sent them crashing to the ground. Tybalt, the merchant, and the tablet. As they hit the sand, the stone was jarred from his hands.
Get it! Don't let him have the tablet!
The merchant wiggled toward it. Not an easy task with a 300-pound pooch on your chest.
Get off me, you nincompoop! Get off me!
But the sound of the merchant's voice gave Tybalt even more joy, making him pant harder, drool gooier, and lick wetter. The merchant coughed and gagged.
No, boy! Easy, fella, easy!
Still, his claws were only inches from the tablet. If he could just touch them, if he could just reach out and... Denise spotted what he was doing and lunged for the stone, just as the merchant did.
Chapter 11. Greed.
Nathan watched as Denise and the merchant rolled back and forth in the sand, fighting for the tablet.
Let me...
It's mine!
Here! The Denise doesn't know!
It's mine!
The merchant nearly had it in his claws before she yanked it away.
The Denise must not!
Pulling the marker from her pocket, she started writing the letters M-I...
The Denise must give it to me!
The merchant wrapped his claws around it, ripping it from her hands, just as she finished the word mine. Suddenly the tablet flashed white hot, and the merchant dropped it to the sand, screaming.
Ah! Ah!
Denise quickly scooped it up, but in her hands it appeared as cool as always. And Nathan knew the reason. It was the last word she'd written on it. Now the tablet would always be hers. Now nobody would be able to touch it.
Way to go, Denny!
Nice work!
We'll see about nice.
The merchant sneered as he rose to his feet and smoothed his ruffled scales.
So, the Denise doesn't want to share, does she? Fine. If the Denise wants to be greedy, let her be greedy.
He reached to his emotion generator and flipped another switch.
Denny, look out!
But he was too late. Before Denise could respond, a mist of emotion shot from the merchant's generator and covered her entire body. Suddenly, her eyes grew wide with desire. She pointed at the first thing she saw, a nearby beach umbrella.
Mine!
As if caught in a mighty wind, the umbrella ripped from the sand and flew across the beach until it clattered onto the ground at Denise's feet. Nathan looked to his brother in astonishment. She pointed at the next thing she saw, the lifeguard station. Again she cried,
Mine!
Immediately it tore from its foundation and was at her side, a little tipsy from the sudden move, but there nonetheless.
If the Denise wants to control the tablet, let her. I'll simply control the Denise.
Mine!
Denise pointed at a pair of sandals on the feet of one of the laughers. Suddenly they were on her feet.
You can't control her!
Hasn't the Nathan learned yet? Whoever controls the emotions controls the person.
We'll see about that.
Josh reached for his water skin.
You may have her now, but not for long.
Oh, yes, very long. And I'll soon have the Joshua and the Nathan as well.
No way!
Nathan raised his shield and stepped beside his brother. The armor fit much better now, and nearly perfect.
With this shield and that water, you can't touch us!
The Nathan has a point. I can't.
He turned to Denise and spoke.
Look at the Nathan's nice, shiny armor. Wouldn't the Denise love to have that?
Denise smiled and pointed.
Mine!
Immediately, the shield was ripped away and the armor torn off. Now Nathan stood only in his underwear.
Denny!
But she didn't hear over the merchant's laughter. Suddenly, the brothers were defenseless. They still had the water, but without the shield or armor, there was nothing to protect them from the merchant's emotions.
Let's see.
He looked over the switches strapped to his chest.
What will it be? Fear? No, we tried that before. An interesting reaction, but not quite the effect we're looking for.
Listen.
Joshua tried to reason, but the merchant wasn't listening.
Here's an excellent choice.
You just can't go around.
How about a little hopelessness?
A little what?
Hopelessness. It's one of my favorites, and soon to be yours.
Wait!
The merchant flipped the switch.
No!
But the mist shot from the generator and gently rained down upon both of them.
Listro Q!
Aristophanes shouted over the alarms in master control. The purple creature turned to his partner. No words had to be said. Each knew what had to be done. Listro Q reached into his pocket for his cross-dimensionalizer.
No! It's too dangerous.
Other choice. What have we?
There's no way of knowing the outcome. The tapestries are completely unraveled. Yes, they are.
If don't go we, then destroyed will be our friends.
Aristophanes agreed.
Not only our friends, but all upside-downers as well. We gotta stop the merchant from casting his spell.
You don't understand. There is nothing I can do if you fall under his power.
Aristophanes nodded.
We know the risks. Our chances are few, but they're Imager's beloved. What more can we do?
The Weaver took a deep breath. It was true. The Upside-Down Kingdom was Imager's favorite. No price was too great to save them. Imager had proven that by his own sacrifice for them, the one symbolized by the Blood Mountains. And if Imager was willing to pay such a price, how could he, the Weaver, prevent Listro Q and Aristophanes from doing any less? The two quietly waited for his decision. Then at last he nodded. Slowly, sadly. Listro Q entered the coordinates as Aristophanes fired off one last poem.
Don't worry about us. We're pros. Don't you know? Them quadrants there are entered. So let's get on with the...
And they were gone. The Weaver stood alone. He could feel a lump growing in his throat, moisture burning in his eyes. Finally, he turned back to the screen and whispered hoarsely,
I'm going to miss those poems. Yes, I am.
Chapter 12. To the Rescue, sort of.
By the time Aristophanes and Listro Q arrived at the Upside-Down Kingdom, the situation was hopeless. Literally. The merchant had fired the mist over the boys, and now they felt completely hopeless. Nathan greeted them flatly.
Oh, hello. Sorry you had to come all this way just to get destroyed.
Say what, you?
He's got us. The merchant's too powerful for us to win.
The merchant chuckled to his panting pet.
Well, Tebold, what do we have here? More victims. Let me see.
He looked down to his switches.
What would be appropriate emotions for nosy, do-gooder Faeranians?
Aristophanes turned to the boys. There wasn't much time to explain.
Those are only emotions over you that he's tossed. Don't let him control you. You can still be your boss.
It's no use.
It's hopeless. They've got my armor and shield. There's no way we can defend ourselves now.
The merchant continued surveying his emotion switches. Apparently, he was in no hurry.
Let's see. We have anger, anxiety, apathy.
Aristophanes tried again.
Don't go by your feelings. Go by what you know. Trust Imager's promise that you'll overthrow this here foe.
I don't see how.
It's hopeless.
Bashful, bewildered, bitter.
Aristophanes turned to Listro Q, hoping he'd have a suggestion. But his partner was as clueless as he. If the brothers refused to believe, how could they force them? Then there was the little matter of the merchant and his generator.
Foolish, frantic, friendly.
Should they just grab Samson and hightail it back to Pharaoh before they too got zapped? After all, they didn't create these problems. Denise did. As an upside-downer, it was her choice, her problem. And yet, Imager had such love for these people. Come to think of it, so did Aristophanes and his partners. Throughout their journeys together, a deep friendship had grown. A friendship so strong that they couldn't leave the kids, even if it was their fault. No, Aristophanes and Listro Q had to stay. They had to stay and what? Suddenly, Listro Q's eyes lit up. He stepped toward Joshua.
Water. Still have you in the water skin?
Sure, but look how torn it is. Everything's ruined. Nothing's going right. The merchant's got Nathan's shield. He's controlling Denny. You're about to get hit with emotions yourself. Everything's just hopeless.
Listro Q grabbed the water skin.
The best defense is offense.
Optimistic, Outrage! That's it! Outrage would be nice, yes! Outrage would be very nice.
The merchant reached to the switch. Aristophanes quickly whispered to Listro Q.
I don't know what you're planning, but it better be quick, because we got 1.8 seconds before he switches that switch.
Listro Q unfolded the gash at the top of Joshua's water skin.
Put that away! Put that away this instant!
What are you doing? You're gonna make him madder. He'll make things worse.
Listen. Carefully, very listen.
To what?
But Listro Q didn't answer. Instead, he lifted the water skin over Joshua's head and poured the liquid letters and words over him.
Stop it!
Next, he turned and poured some over Nathan's head.
Stop it!
The merchant quickly flipped the switch and fired the outrage mist, but not before Aristophanes shouted to the brothers,
Trust in Imager's words. What you hear is the truth. Feelings are fickle, but his words are absolute.
That was as far as he got before the emotion landed upon him and Listro Q.
What are you talking about? What words?
Aristophanes snapped.
Why do I have to explain everything for you? Use your brain for once.
Shout, don't at them.
Listro Q seemed equally as angry. Aristophanes turned on his friend and shouted back,
Don't tell me what to do, you pretentious purple pinhead.
Listro Q pulled up his sleeves.
Who are you calling purple?
So much for Iranian love.
The merchant roared with laughter, but he didn't laugh long.
Listen. What is that?
I don't hear anything.
Shh!
It's nothing. Just the wind blowing in the...
Nathan strained to listen.
No. Wait a minute. It sounds... Is that somebody whispering?
The merchant glanced nervously about.
It's nothing. You hear nothing.
Josh turned to his brother.
Can you make it out?
Nathan shook his head. Both boys continued to strain. The words were very quiet, very small, but they were very, very persistent.
You will defeat him.
I still can't quite...
Shh!
You will defeat him.
Can you make it out now?
Almost.
You will defeat him.
Nathan's eyes widened. He'd heard the voice once before, once when Denise was trapped in the experiment.
It's that
Imager. That's what he said when we were at the center. Those were his exact words.
I hear nothing.
You will defeat him.
It's in the water.
He ran his hand over the liquid letters and words dripping from his face, realizing the voice was in the water.
Of course it's in the water. It's his words.
But it's hopeless. We can't defeat him.
That's right. It's hopeless.
The merchant sneered.
Exactly. Trust your feelings. They are truth. Listen to your feelings, not these words.
Nathan looked to the merchant. As he looked and listened to him, his feelings of hopelessness grew stronger. He glanced to Joshua. The expression on his brother's face said he felt the same thing. And as the hopelessness grew stronger, the voice of the water grew weaker.
Why is it fading?
Fading is not his voice. Fading is your hearing.
What?
If trust Imager's words, then will fade the power of feelings. But if trust your feelings, then power will fade of Imager's words.
That's right. The decision is yours who you'll follow today. Either Imager's words or your feelings. Obey.
Imager's words? I want to follow Imager's words, but...
Suddenly, the voice grew louder.
You will defeat him.
But I feel so helpless.
Immediately, the voice started to fade.
No, Josh. We have to trust his words. His words are what's true.
But it's so hard. I can't.
Nathan fought against the feeling.
I know, but remember how they helped us in the Sea of Justice? How those words saved your life?
Yes.
And how his power saved me from Bobok's menagerie?
Yes.
But that was as far as Nathan got.
Stop it!
The merchant fired another shot of hopelessness at him. The mist covered Nathan even more thickly than before. Instantly, he felt himself sliding back into impossible hopelessness. He turned to his brother, pleading helplessly with his eyes for him to take over, for him to take charge. Joshua seemed to understand. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He set his jaw and with great effort spoke,
Remember the way Imager saved Denny from the experiment?
Yes.
Nathan groaned, feeling the slightest stirring of hope. Then, mustering all of his strength, he added,
And how he saved me from the illusionist!
Yes!
Joshua seemed to grow stronger.
It's working, Nathan! Don't give up! Let's keep remembering what he's done!
Fools! Your feelings are what is real! Trust your feelings, not some long-forgotten...
How about his power to reweave Denny?
Or how that water destroyed Kegarp!
And Cirlo!
Stop it! Imager is nothing! His promises are nothing!
No!
Josh spun around to face him.
You are nothing! You will be defeated!
You are a fool!
The merchant moved toward him menacingly.
Prove to me those past memories are real.
Prove?
You're the scientist! Can you touch those memories? Can you prove them?
Josh started to falter.
Well, no. They're just memories. There's no...
No, we will defeat you! Joshua and I will defeat you! Right, Josh?
Josh tried to say yes, obviously fighting to recover from the last blow.
Right, Josh?
His brother turned to him. It was no good. Nathan could see him starting to slip away. But grabbing his shoulders, Nathan looked him straight in the face and shouted,
We can do this! You and me together! Joshua, we can do this!
He saw the slightest glint of understanding return to his brother's eyes. He nodded to him encouragingly and saw even more strength return.
Just like Imager told us! Together, you and I can do this! Together, we can defeat him!
Slowly, Joshua began to nod. It was working.
He's never failed us, has he? Not once! Not once!
Confidence continued returning to Josh. He grew stronger by the second.
Lies! You are liars!
At last, Josh's full strength had returned. He spun back on the merchant.
No! You're the liar! Imager's words have never failed!
They destroyed the illusionists!
That's right!
They destroyed Boba!
Yes!
And they destroyed Cirlo!
And they'll destroy you!
Josh took a step toward the merchant. With full confidence, Joshua took the water skin from Listoque and unfolded the gash at the top of it.
What are you doing?
He began approaching the merchant.
Stay back! Stay away!
Nathan joined his brother's side, and together they continued forward. The merchant backed away.
I'm warning you. Stay away with that!
The brothers closed in. In desperation, the merchant turned to his faithful companion.
T-Bolt! T-Bolt! Attack!
But T-Bolt was doing what he did best, running for his life in the opposite direction. Now the merchant was only a few feet away. Joshua held out the water skin.
I think it's time for you to leave our world.
But I like it here.
Before Joshua could stop him, the merchant fired off another volley of hopelessness, and another, and another. Both brothers staggered under the impact.
There's plenty more where that came from!
Imager's voice quickly started to fade.
Josh! Water! We need more water!
Josh raised the water skin and poured it over his head. The voice grew louder. He tossed the skin to Nathan, who followed suit. The merchant began to panic. He twirled to Denise.
The Denise! The Denise must do something! The Denise must write!
But apparently Denise already had a plan. Still consumed with greed, she knew exactly what she wanted. She pointed to the water in Josh's water skin and shouted,
What?
Immediately, the rest of the water was sucked from the skin and dumped onto her. From head to toe, the liquid letters and words washed over her. She coughed and gasped, trying to catch her breath. And for the first time, she also seemed to hear Imager's voice. Nathan shouted to her,
Listen to Imager's words! Trust his words! Trust his words, not your feelings!
Don't believe them! I can give you anything you want!
Denise turned to him.
Just name it! We're partners, remember?
She started to nod.
No, Denny! No!
Denny, don't! Don't trust him! Listen to Imager's words!
Slowly, Denise raised her hand and started to point. The merchant's grin broadened.
Anything, my dear. Just name it. Anything at all.
Denny, no!
Nathan raced toward her, but Josh grabbed him, holding him back.
Let me go! Let me!
It won't do any good. She has to decide. Remember what Aristophanes said, but it has to be her decision.
Nathan looked to his brother, then reluctantly stopped struggling. Of course, he was right. It was up to Denise. He turned to watch as she opened her mouth. She spoke only 3 words.
That I want.
She pointed at the emotion generator. Immediately, the generator was ripped from the merchant's chest and rested in her arms.
Give that back to me!
All right, Denny, way to go!
The merchant started toward her, but hesitated as he saw that she was still dripping with Imager's water.
Give that back to me now! Give it to me!
I won't give you this, but I might have something else.
She looked down to the generator and scanned the row of switches.
What are you doing? Put that down! You don't know how to use it?
The merchant started backing up. Spotting a particular switch, Denise smiled. Then she pointed the nozzle of the generator toward the merchant.
The Denise doesn't know what she's doing! The Denise doesn't...
Finally, she fired a jet of mist.
Oh, no!
It fell gently over the merchant.
No! No! I do not feel this!
The brothers looked on in wonder as the merchant continued to shriek in agony. Finally, he unfurled his leathery wings.
How about one for the road?
Denise fired another volley onto him. He flapped his wings and rose off the ground.
No!
He grew smaller and smaller until he finally disappeared altogether. Nathan turned to Denise, and before he knew it, he was racing toward her and throwing his arms around her.
Denny!
Soon his brother joined them in the hug.
Come on, guys! Knock it off! I can't breathe!
But they had never bothered to let her have her way before. Why should they start now?
You okay? You feeling okay now?
Feelings? I don't know. I wouldn't put too much trust in feelings, would you?
No, I guess not.
Nathan joined in the laughter. So did Denise. It felt good. It had been a long time, and it felt very good.
But what did you zap him with? What type of emotion could cause him so much pain?
Oh, that's easy.
Denise grinned.
I got him with the one he hated most.
Yeah? Which is?
Denise's grin broadened.
I nailed him with love.
Chapter 13. Another Day, Another Saved Planet.
It didn't take long for Denise to get things back to normal. After all, she still had the tablet, and she was still the boss. With a few strokes of her trusty pen, everyone in the group was back to their usual selves. Although they all seemed grateful, Mr. Hornsberry was particularly pleased, since it's tough to be a snob when you're sitting on the ground grinning like an idiot.
Here.
Denise handed Aristophanes the merchant's generator of emotions.
Do whatever you need to get rid of this thing, will you?
I'll dispose of it quickly on that. You can depend. As of now, the merchant's power is officially at an end.
I tell you, if I never feel another emotion, it will be too soon.
Lister Q shook his head in disagreement.
Emotions, good they are.
Aristophanes agreed.
He's right. Emotions are swell, 'cause they help us to deal with life's ups and downs. So it's good that we feel.
Lister Q nodded.
Like instruments on dashboard, emotions us tell inside what is happening to our minds.
Huh? You lost me on that one.
Joshua gave a shot at translating.
You're saying emotions are like gauges that tell us what's happening inside our minds?
Lister Q agreed.
Gauges and thermometers of your mind, are they?
Josh nodded, then added,
We just have to make sure we're using them and they're not using us.
Correct, are you?
Excuse me, please.
Denise turned to see the father of the chocolate bar eater. Behind him stood the hundreds of people who had been on the ground laughing and smiling. Their uncontrollable emotions were now under control, but many of their bodies were still impossibly ruined.
There's still a lot more that needs to be done.
He motioned to the crowd.
We still need your help.
Denise nodded as she looked out over the crowd. He was right. Things were still a mess. A huge mess. She took a deep breath, sighed, then muttered half to herself,
Where to begin?
All things make as used to be they.
You mean like Imager had it before I fixed up things?
Sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
A murmur of approval swept through the crowd. Denise asked,
But how? I mean, if I give them back pain, they'll all suffer. If I give them death, lots of them will die. And what about all those rules I took away?
She sighed again and looked down at the tablet.
I tell you, it would be better if I'd never even found this thing.
Precisely.
What?
That very thing can make happen you.
You're not serious.
Aristophanes nodded.
None of this would be if the tablet never was. So right, it never existed. And see what it does.
But then I won't have the power to make things happen.
Correct are you? Then rely on Imager only, must you?
But...
Live by his plan, your only option.
But...
Either you trust him or don't. The decision is plain. Either Imager's the boss, or this insane life remains.
Denise turned back to the crowd. Well, things were insane. He was right about that. She'd only made a few changes, written a few little words, and look what had happened. She had tried to help these people, but had nearly destroyed them. Instead of perfect people, she had turned them into out-of-control monsters. Monsters who now stood silently waiting, hoping she'd make the right decision. Denise hated the thought of losing control. But worse, she hated the thought of keeping it. It's true, there were thousands of things she didn't understand about Imager's ways. She probably never would. But she did know one thing. At least she did now. His ways were a whole lot better than hers. Finally, she brought the felt pin up to the board.
Well, it's been real.
Too real.
The others chuckled nervously as they waited. She spoke to the tablet.
I guess I'll see you around.
Or not.
Or not.
Then quickly and deliberately she wrote the words, "The tablet does not exist." Denise woke with a start. For a minute she didn't know where she was, until she felt the jab of a steel armrest in her ribs, the sticky vinyl against her arms, and the cramp in her neck. Ah, yes, the hospital chair. She looked over at her mother, who was still asleep. The sedative was still working. In fact, in the dim morning light, she actually looked kind of peaceful. But something had changed. Denise felt it immediately. Her anger about Mom was gone. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it had something to do with that strange dream she'd just had. Talk about weird. She heard a gentle clearing of throats and looked up to see Joshua and Nathan standing in the doorway.
Guys!
She rose, struggling to stand.
Sorry we couldn't come last night. We had to watch Grandpa's store.
How's she doing?
Nathan limped past Denise to look at her mother.
Pretty good.
You stay here all night?
Yeah.
Denise rubbed her stiff neck.
It wasn't too bad, except for the dream. Talk about weird.
The boys exchanged glances.
The dream?
Yeah. It was all about this flat stone, and me writing on it, and...
Was there a creature in it? Some guy with a machine strapped to his chest?
Well, yeah. How did...
And an eight-legged dog?
How did you guys know?
Again, the brothers traded looks.
Nathan had the same dream.
What?
So did I.
You're kidding!
Her mother stirred slightly. Nathan lowered his voice.
We both had it last night.
You mean we all three dreamed the same dream?
About a tablet.
And some creep trying to take over the world?
And you ruling instead of Imager.
Denise leaned against the wall to steady herself. On the weirdness scale, this was... well, it was off the scale. Way off.
How? Why?
No one had an answer. Then she asked another question, one she figured they were all thinking.
something to do with the Faeronians, doesn't it?
Probably. Next time we see them, we're gonna have to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to.
I can't wait to find out what was going on.
But even as Denise spoke and glanced back to her mother, she suspected that she already knew. Somehow, deep inside, she already knew. Meanwhile, somewhere between the Upside-Down Kingdom and Faerah, roly-poly Aristophanes, purple Listroque, and the feisty Samson were cross-dimensionalizing home. Listroque thought to Aristophanes,
So, bits and pieces only they'll remember.
A foggy dream is all they'll recall, but it'll help in their growth of giving Imager all.
Aristophanes folded his arms in satisfaction. As the leader of the group, he was pleased with the way he'd pulled things off. Actually, he was very pleased.
Only one question to ask have I.
Ask away, my good man, ask away.
If normal is back to everything,
Yes?
then why a new companion have we?
What new companion? We don't have a new...
Suddenly he was hit by a galloping 8-legged dog. Before he could be stopped, the grateful animal hopped on Aristophanes' chest and began slurping, licking, and drooling.
Easy, fella. Down. Ooh, down, boy.
Samson and Listroque started to laugh.
Come on, fella. Easy now. Somebody call him off. Call him off.
Although his buddy struggled to pull the animal away, there was something about their continual laughter that told Aristophanes they weren't trying all that hard. Yes, sir, by the looks of things, it appeared Tybalt had found himself a brand new master. And by the looks of things, it appeared he would remain glued to Aristophanes' side, drool and all, traveling with him wherever he went, even on their future visits to 3 very special friends in the Upside-Down Kingdom.
Come on, fella. Get down. Easy now. Easy.
You have been listening to The Bloodstone Chronicles by Bill Myers, narrated by the author, featuring Emily Scherner as Denise, Susie Breck as Nathan, Laurel Merlington as Josh, Dick Fredericks as Aristophanes and the Merchant of Emotions, Sandy Burr as the Illusionist, Jay Charles as the Weaver, author Bill Myers as Bobach, Bud, and Mr. Hornsberry, Reverend William P. Myers as Listroque, Tom Casaletto as several characters, and also featuring lots of people who dropped in to play. Produced and directed by Jeff Bowden for Zondervan New Media. Recording, mixing, and CD mastering at Zondervan Studios, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Recording copyright 2003 by Zondervan. This production contains the complete text of the novel The Bloodstone Chronicles, copyright 2003 by Bill Myers. All rights reserved. Unauthorized duplication is prohibited by law. This Zondervan Audio Pages production is also available in a printed book edition at your local bookstore.